radar, you can almost see an S shape in here. That is a pretty clear indicator of lots of spin. So let's, keep that circle on the map and shift this to, instead of the mode that shows you how much rain there is, which is the normal mode you're used to seeing the radar, let's go back to see that rotation. And there is a clear circulation pattern within that area. Tornado warning continuing there, of course. So I'll clear that circle. Let's get a little bit closer in now. Depending on which radar site you're using, the colors have jumped because we are looking at a slightly different site here. But again, this green and red area right next to each other indicating that spin, with green colors in this case going this way, red going the other. So there is your counterclockwise circulation in between. That is the tornado potential that we are following. And again, it is going to be moving its way over I-40 in Arkansas, leaving Shoal Creek, heading towards the Spadra area. So if we time that out, and we'll time out that whole kind of line and move it on off towards the north and east, going through Clarksville by about the next 10 minutes or so. This thing's moving. The forward motion on these has been close to 55 miles per hour. So highway speed movement for these storms. And there are some new warnings coming out as we speak. Let me clear this out. We'll go back to the wider view of the radar, the traditional mode of the radar, and take a look at those storms that are coming through. So again, we've got the newest one just south of there. They're all lining up at this point in this very high shear environment. So there are a lot of potential. All of the storms that are out there have that chance to be spinning as we go through the next several hours here. And unfortunately, it seems to be doing just that. Again, we can take a look at this current radar picture, and it doesn't immediately present itself as the type of storm that you really need to watch out for. It doesn't immediately look like that supercell thunderstorm until you look at the motion within here. And again, we've got this, we've got a couplet down here with a sheared line. We've got another area in here, lots of spin along this entire zone. And that's what the National Weather Service is watching for. And so if we're going to kind of time that out up towards the Little Texas area, we've got Parks in there at 8:13, Little Texas by just before the bottom of the hour, going through Bluffton by 8:35, and Waltreek at 8:40. A lot of action with these storms, unfortunately. Now, as we move away from that storm and head back into Texas, I want to show you these because, yes, again, it's a severe thunderstorm warning. A lot of times not getting the credit it deserves, because if we put the lightning on here, every lightning strike is severe, and we are covering northern Texas with lightning at this point. Just a gargantuan amount of electrical activity in these storms. And let's continue to slide south towards the San Antonio area. Hold on. Sorry, guys. Let's zoom back out and go down towards San Antonio, because there have been all kinds of warnings in the San Antonio area, just through San Antonio itself, now getting onto the east side of the area, where you see the faint green lines coming out of the storm. That is the wind itself pushing forward, and you're seeing bugs and dirt and debris being picked up and moved away from the storm. Very strong wind potential with this, and it's why we have such a huge severe thunderstorm warning over Bexar, Guadalupe, and Wilson counties here. Again, portions of San Antonio, but the worst of the weather is done in San Antonio itself. That said, we've got all kinds of wind energy moving through. And again, if we put the lightning on across this area, it is, and a new tornado warning on that leading edge. So let's take the lightning back off so we can get a better view of that. Tornado warning over Guadalupe. A little kink in the line. You see that right in here, almost that dog leg. It looks like that all of a sudden. That is inflow air coming in, wrapping into that squall line. This is going to be a threat for the duration of this line as it moves through the rest of the southeast. They're very faint. It's tough to pick out. They'll only be there for a scan or two, and then they will fade away. But because of the presentation on the radar, where we know we have this inflow air wrapping back in, and then we get the red-green couplet on there, that's enough to suggest that we may have a tornado that's trying to form right on that leading edge of that nasty thunderstorm complex that came through San Antonio. So it's going to be racing on off eastbound, maybe a little bit of a northerly component. What's different with this type of tornado signature is that it often kind of walks its way up the line of storm. So if it's here now, whereas the other type, a supercell thunderstorm, you might say, okay, it's going to start bending down towards the south and towards the right. Not the case. This is probably going to walk its way northbound. So Marion to McQueenie, watch out in this portion of the warning. If you're in this warning, please take it seriously for everybody, because it's much too difficult to exactly pinpoint where that tornado is going to be. But generally, we know that they do work their way north or up that line of storm. So again, this is our inflow notch right in here, and if there's a tornado, it's hanging out right in this section. And the the velocity mode, the motion of those raindrops confirms that with that red-green couplet. As for anything being lofted into the sky there, it's always real tough on these too, because you're right on the edge. There's nothing for that beam to bounce off of out here, so it's all blue. If this were blue surrounded by red, like back here, if that were blue, we'd say, okay, we've got debris. It's real tough to say that where there's no rain going on out ahead of the line. The bottom line here is that you need to respect this warning for Guadalupe. Goes until 8:30, and surrounded by a severe thunderstorm warning. This whole line has very strong winds. It would not surprise me at all if we start getting severe thunderstorm warnings a little bit further north through the Austin area. And Carl, the lightning along this line, I can't even imagine what the drive looks like up 35 tonight.
Yeah, you know, we're looking at 2,300 strikes in North Texas and also into parts of Oklahoma right now. There's a live camera in Dallas, 61 degrees. We've been looking at multiple lightning flashes there in Dallas. It was a very scary night. There you go, right there. And we actually had a tornado warning in the metro area earlier this evening, not that long ago. Continue to see a lot of lightning, and that's going to be one of the things that there will be plenty of through the night tonight. I want to show you the lightning now as it stands across North Texas into Oklahoma, western Arkansas. Another live camera for you, first of all. Looking at downtown Dallas there, beautiful skyline, and we continue to see some lingering lightning across much of North Texas right now. And looking at a total of more than 2,300 strikes across this region, North Texas as well as in Oklahoma and also in Arkansas. So it is incredibly electrical out there tonight, and that certainly can be deadly as well. Now let's talk about the forecast and where we go from here. So you've got this area of high potential for severe weather. Primarily, it's going to be a damaging wind threat along with a tornado threat, and it's going to linger through the night tonight. Now, oftentimes we talk about a severe threat beginning to come down in intensity as we get deeper into the evening. Well, in this case, even as we're starting to lose some of the instability of the day, one thing that's going to be increasing is the wind in the atmosphere. And that's another really important component of severe weather. We've got a 7 out of 10, by the way, for the torque on there, centered on Oklahoma, Arkansas, and northern Louisiana. So talking about this low-level wind, it's the low-level jet, as we call it. And these are winds at about a mile up in the atmosphere. And when they're really, really strong, that does a couple of things. One is that it creates more shear in the atmosphere. So we tend to get a better chance for rotation in the atmosphere, rotating storms. The other is that it increases the damaging wind threat. And as you watch the evolution of this low-level jet going through tonight and into tomorrow morning, that's winds of 80 to 90 to maybe 100 miles per hour just off the ground. So even a modest storm can tap into that and bring some very strong winds down to the ground. There's going to be a damaging wind threat that continues through the overnight into tomorrow morning. There's also going to be an ongoing tornado threat because this is such an energetic system. So I want to show you the model forecast, and we've got the low-level winds superimposed on here. I want you to notice some of these discrete cells that are popping out ahead of the line. Those are the ones you really want to watch very carefully. You've got the line itself, kind of a broken line of storms. Certainly you could see embedded supercells within that line, but those discrete cells out ahead of the line are going to be really capable of producing tornadoes in this high shear environment, especially farther south where you've got a little more instability. Now we go into midnight tonight. We're still seeing some of those discrete cells out ahead of the main line. With the line itself, a damaging wind threat, some embedded supercells, some tornadoes will be possible. We take it through the overnight that's starting to come into Memphis as well as into the Mississippi River Valley, breaking up a little bit, but you still do see some of these discrete cells there in western Tennessee and also in Mississippi, and that's early in the morning. So this is one of those nights where if you usually put your phone on airplane mode when you go to bed at the side of your bed so it doesn't beam radio waves into your head all night, Well, tonight you want to leave your phone on so that way you can make sure that you get those warnings. Here we go into 7 o'clock in the morning. We've still got some very strong storms there in eastern Mississippi. And then even into 10 o'clock in the morning, the line's still very robust. But also notice right there, discrete supercells firing in central and southern parts of Alabama. We're going to need to watch those very, very closely. The Weather Channel's Tevin Wooten is in Dallas with a look at what people are dealing with tonight.
Welcome into North Texas, where it's been a very volatile day for severe weather. We've had ripe conditions for tornadoes, severe thunderstorm warnings, and even the potential for colder temperatures on the backside of this system as well. So quite an interesting setup here when we consider the atmosphere and what it can do and what it has done for us on a Friday and pushing into Saturday here. This is a steady stream of rainfall, perhaps the steadiest rainfall and heaviest rainfall that we've seen throughout Dallas, Texas today. We also had a few tornado warnings throughout the area in Dallas County and Tarrant County near the DFW airport as well. I mean, look at the roadways right now, soaked with rainfall here. This has been ongoing for about 30 or 40 minutes or so. There's also a game tonight, the Lakers versus the Mavericks, so a lot of people are rushing into the American Airlines Center as quickly as possible to dodge the downpours that we have here near Victory Park. So what can we expect after this line clears through? Cooler temperatures into our Saturday with temperatures close to 45 degrees for highs. The lowest temperatures of tomorrow expected to be right near freezing. That's the latest here from Dallas-Fort Worth. Let's send it back to you.
All right, Tevin, thank you so much. And multiple threats with this storm now. We're also going to be looking at some very heavy rain coming across the same areas through the overnight and flash flood potential, particularly in Oklahoma and in Arkansas.
Yeah, and you know, some of the same area that has severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings also has flash flooding ongoing. So that changes the messaging a little bit. If you happen to be in a flood zone like this happened to be Decatur, Texas, but then you also have tornado warnings. You have to take shelter in the lowest dry level, not just the lowest level, but the lowest dry level, because we know some of you may be taking on water tonight. Multiple watches and warnings across North Texas, including the flash flooding. The potential for flash flooding stretches from Dallas-Fort Worth all the way up through the Great Lakes into the Northeast Corridor. So a long kind of fetch of potential here for flooding. Not only a possibility, but a likelihood. As Carl mentioned, this kind of corridor, southwest Missouri, northwestern portions of Arkansas into eastern portions of Oklahoma, likely flooding. But, you know, when we look at this stretch, this is all flash flood warning action going on across the area. We can start out by removing the tornado warnings and the severe thunderstorm warnings. Let's just look at some of the flood alerts. This is the Dallas-Fort Worth area. There are still flood advisories along I-20, flash flood warnings just west of Denton. In this area, we have actually seen several reports of pretty intense flooding. This is Fort Worth. Fort Worth Fire Department responding to high water rescues near the hospital. Or you can look north along the I-35 corridor, where State Highway 32 in Marietta was closed west of I-35 because of water on the roadway. Those are just a couple of examples for you. The Fort Smith, Arkansas area is under a flash flood warning. Remember, there are severe thunderstorms and tornado warnings just east of there. So yeah, there's alerts going on for all kinds of reasons. No active reports in Fort Smith yet, but that flash flood warning continues. Springfield, Missouri, Christian, Green, Webster, all under a flash flood warning until 11 o'clock. Lots of reports coming in from this area, from around Springfield. Fairgrove, the highway closed near Farm Road 193 because of flash flooding. Or you can, jump to the southwest side of town where street flooding was continuing along Highway 60. And in and around St. Louis, we had a burst of rain come through. Now we don't have quite as much in town, but there are flood warnings on either side, and more rain is on the way. Again, it is a huge area of concern tonight with that potential for severe thunderstorm warnings continuing across the area. And also, severe thunderstorms can't be ruled out that could have tornadoes. We'll give you an update on those warnings coming up.
America's most trusted TV news network, the Weather Channel.
Welcome back, everyone, as we continue to follow severe weather breaking out across the center of the country into the southern plains. Tornado watches that continue well into the night until 2 a.m., including the Little Rock area, as well as all the way up through southern portions of Missouri. We can also look down into northeast Texas, where the Dallas-Fort Worth area is almost out of the tornado watch. Fort Worth is, Dallas is not. That part of the tornado watch goes until 9. Northeast Texas, back through Shreveport, goes until 2 a.m. And then a severe thunderstorm watch for the rest of I-35, more or less. Austin to San Antonio, almost all the way down to Corpus Christi. And that potential for more severe weather for the Texas coast as we go through the rest of the night. Want to give you an update on a couple of big storms that we are following, the most pressing of which is in here, northwest portions of Arkansas. There is a tornado warning that has just crossed over I-40. It's for this portion of the storm. Notice how this cell was going almost due north, got run into by this part of the system going west to east. So a big cell merger, sometimes that helps to give a little bit of extra kick to these storms and crank up that motion within the storm just a little bit more. And right now, we have quite the couplet in the middle of that warning where the reds and greens are right next to each other. Green colors in this case going towards the radar, red going away, and that's the radar beam that you just saw cutting across your screen. This is our counterclockwise spin. We can step this back a couple of moments so you can see that couplet evolving as it moves through the warning, coming just east of Spadra and crossing over I-40 to where it is now, broadening out just a little bit, but still more than enough here that tornado warning continues. And that motion off to the north and west continues as well. Even as this part of the storm is more moving this way, we have, because of that cell merger, the tornado warned storm still working its way on off towards the north and a little bit of an east component. So we can continue to follow that area as it works its way up towards Jasper. This will get out of the warning fairly quickly, but if you're near Garber, if you're near Deline, if you're near Deer, this is some of the timing for you as we continue to monitor that tornado-warned storm working its way on off very quickly on off towards the northeast, close to highway speed, 55, even 60 miles per hour. The big jump into south central Texas, outside San Antonio. The good news here is that the circulation component of this storm continues to weaken. The bad news is that it's going to be a very strong wind event, and we could see new spin-ups on this line at just about any point. National Weather Service saying that they're going to allow this tornado warning to expire momentarily. Weather producer Ryan Davidson chiming in with that. Thank you, Ryan. But we are following, and you can see why they issued it. You see that kind of spin right through here. There are more of those up the line, and so I'm not completely convinced that we're not going to have more of those spin-up tornado warnings. Let's quickly look just in here where there's another one of those kinks, those dog legs, right through the Austin area. Actually not this one, right in here, not quite to Austin. This part of the storm surging forward, rain-wrapped air coming back around. So if we look at the velocities on that component, you can see that is starting to tighten up just a little bit. So I'm sure they're watching that next. Carl, that's just east of 35, outside of San Marcos. And, that's the risk tonight, that we could have these spin-up tornadoes at just about any point.
A lot of shear in the atmosphere, and so, yes, absolutely right. And there's also a cold side to this storm. We've been looking at some wintry weather, some freezing rain, and some snow. Weather Channel's Mike Seidel is in Chicago. And, Mike, it's going to be everything but the kitchen sink there. Some heavier rain just to your south in Kankakee right now, a little bit of lightning and thunder, and you're going to get just about everything over the next 24 hours.
Indeed, down there, they're in the warm sector. It's in the 50s to near 60. Up here, we're 35 to 36. It's a cold rain. It just really kicked in over the past hour here in McHenry. We're 45 miles as the crow flies northwest of the loop in Chicago. This is where it's going to change over first. Rockford now 33. You get up in Wisconsin, you can see on the radar different precip types, different colors. We've got snow to the north. We've had freezing rain in Madison. It's raining in 36 right now in Milwaukee. But as we go through tomorrow, morning and tomorrow afternoon, we'll see things change. The colder air comes in. Aloft is where it counts, because if the cloud temperatures are above freezing, you can't get snow at the ground. That's going to change, and by late afternoon tomorrow, everybody in Chicagoland will be snowing, and the wind will be picking up too as that storm rides south of here across Indianapolis. We'll have wind gusts 40, potentially even 50 miles an hour on the lakefront. So as a result, we're going to have blowing snow, even some drifting snow. The worst roads by far will be tomorrow after sundown. But even in the morning, late morning through the afternoon, out in this area, we'll see some problems on the roadways. Anything that is untreated. So far, Carl, about 300 flights have been canceled at O'Hare, mostly the smaller regional jets, but that's going to ratchet up tonight and certainly tomorrow, and then throw in the de-icing, and we'll have delays. So O'Hare, not a pretty place to be in and out of. So if you're flying from the East Coast to Chicago tomorrow, be aware there could be significant delays and even cancellations.
Yeah, and Mike, pretty big difference in terms of the amount of snowfall from the north side to the south side. Looking at as much as 5 inches there as you get towards Waukegan, and it's probably going to be about 1 to 2 on the south side of Chicago. We're going to have much more on this massive storm and the ongoing severe threat on the other side of the break.
Do you have concerns about
Per person with the $5.99 mix and match deal at Domino's.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel's continuing coverage of severe weather. And look at the lightning here in Limestone, Arkansas, not too far from the I-40 corridor, northern portions of the state. You can't see anything until the lightning strike, and then the whole screen goes white. I wonder if that is a fire that started. We just had a crazy lightning strike occur, and now we've got this glow that doesn't seem to want to go away even after the lightning seems to end. So I think something was struck just moments ago with a strong lightning strike in the area. The whole screen flashed white, if not blue, and then now we have this orange glow. So I'm sure the Arkansas DOT is seeing that on their screens and going, oh, got to send some crews out this way. Those are headlights, so you can tell the difference between, say, a car headlight approaching this camera, the lightning that we're seeing in the sky, and then that orange glow that we have just to the kind of the right center of your screen. It's tough work for the cameras when you have this kind of night where the light keeps constantly changing. So it's hard for the focus. It's pouring down rain. There's constant lightning flashes. It's tough for us to see. It's tough for you at home to see, but a lot going on in that Arkansas camera. One of the main tornado warnings that we're following, if not two, are there just north of that I-40 corridor. So let's start there. Here's Little Rock. Fort Smith is just off this, the west side of your screen. We were following this storm for you for a while. Johnson County tornado warning looked very well put together as it approached from the south, got run into by a storm off towards the west, crashing in. And there's still a little bit of a couplet here, but that is number one, racing away and into a bit of a range fold area where the radar can't see it because of distance, and also it looks like it is weakening dramatically. Unfortunately, just on its heels, in the same areas that just had the tornado warning because of that storm that came through Johnson County, is another warning. This is the type of night that has all kinds of risks, and you know, it's tough communicating it when Johnson County in multiple spots is under two different warnings, and one ends and then the next one fills back in. It's tough to know when you can get out of that safe room. I would say that if you're in Johnson, Logan, and Yell, this is a very well-formed component of the storm. We've got this part surging forward. You got rain-free air, rather, wrapping back in. And so where all those meet up, right in here, we see a clear circulation, and that's right here. This type of tornado warning often meanders its way north along the line of storms. So again, right here, this is where the tornado could be hanging out, but it's going to kind of do one of these and walk its way northbound as the whole storm is moving towards the east. So if you're in Russellville, if you're in Spadra, or if you're in between on I-40, really got to keep a close eye on this storm as it approaches from the south. Let's put a bit of a timing on there. If you're near Gumtree, this is coming directly towards you, eventually towards Delaware or Knoxville, looking pretty likely just before 9 o'clock. And Carl, that's just Arkansas. This line of storms goes all the way down through Texas as well.
Yeah, that's right. And we're watching a line of storms right now with a damaging wind threat and a brand new tornado warning to tell you about as well. That for Caldwell, Gonzales, and Guadalupe counties going until 9 p.m. And so what we're looking at here is a line of storms and a little kink that has developed along the leading edge of that line. Let's focus in on that. This is what we call velocity data, and so right in there is the circulation. You can see that little kink right there where part of the wind is surging forward, and that rotation is where there could very well be a tornado just to the south of Kingsbury. So tracking that forward, that's going to be coming across 80 here in the next few minutes, possibly coming near Luling and also towards Harwood as well. Now, as we look at the larger picture, expand out a little bit, you see that there's an area of very strong winds here. I can look at some of the velocities, and as you look at the yellow color there, that bright yellow color, that's where we're talking about some velocities. Look at that. That is a 74 mile per hour velocity, and I'm sure it's even stronger in that little kink there where that possible tornado is. There you go, 77 miles per hour. So what you've got more broadly here is a damaging wind threat, but then within that, there are areas where it's beginning to tighten up, and those little kinks are where we could be talking about some tornadoes. So let's just track the entire area forward and see where that's going to be. A broad damaging wind threat making its way east, but also you've got that possible tornado coming towards Otine there, or Otine. Also damaging wind moving towards Beebe and towards Cost as well. And there you see latest scan doesn't appear to be as wrapped up in this latest scan, but again, you've got a whole series of kinks. You've got one right in here, and then another one here, and then another one to the south, even more off to the south of that. The entire thing has got these kinks on it, so you've got this potential for brief spin-up tornadoes along with a damaging wind threat. We're going to have much more on that coming up.
Leftovers? Track
At $10.99 for a limited time only at Olive Garden. We're all family here.
Our active evening continues here across the center of the country, following exactly as forecast, unfortunately, and that means a long line of severe weather. The lightning is intense from St. Louis all the way down to San Antonio. Tornado warnings embedded within this line, especially in northwest Arkansas right now. Let's start off by looking at one of the newest warnings. This is over portions of Newton, Pope, and Searcy. Goes until 9:15. Now, I will kind of caveat this by saying that this warning is about as far away from the two available high-resolution radar sites as possible. Still want to try to get a better look at this storm by changing to the velocity mode. Now, within here, these yellow colors indicate about 80 to 85, even close to 90 mile per hour winds. That said, we're pretty far from the radar, so that is aloft a bit. If it rains through there, that kind of rain that we've been seeing could push that wind down to the surface. And there is a distinct shear line here, right? We go all these reds and yellows and then immediately over to greens. That's what the National Weather Service is watching, that we could have these kind of spin-up zones where there could be a tornado there at just about any point. Impossible at this vantage point to say exactly where it would be along that line, but it's something that we have to continue to monitor. We were following a storm that came through Johnson County. A little sliver of that is still in there, but kind of encompassed by the other warning as well. So the bottom line there is that we could see a tornado at any point in that storm. And again, that's that range fold, that distance problem that I was telling you about. Further towards the south, we go into Logan and Yell. This was also clipping portions of Johnson County. That part of the storm has been allowed to expire. That said, if you're in Logan and Yell, very strong component where this inflow air is wrapping in, and we got this rain cooled air surging forward. So where that meets up, we wind up with a circulation potential, and we're seeing exactly that. You see this little kink in the line like that? That indicates that we could have one of those tornadoes on that line of storms moving its way through the area. So if we time out that zone on off towards the north and east, it'll head towards Delaware and Scotia just before the top of the hour. You got about 20 minutes or so before it gets to you. Certainly a dangerous evening on either side of I-40, Carl, there in the Arkansas area. Several storms in There's so much shear that each one is trying to rotate along the line.
Yes, exactly. And that's what we're seeing in the central part of Texas as well right now. We're looking at a line of storms and a damaging wind threat, but also some kinks within the line. One of those being warned on for a possible tornado now. That's Caldwell, Gonzales, and Guadalupe counties under warning for a tornado. And you can see how we've got a little bit of a kink right in there. You can see how it kind of wraps in right in there. It's not the tightest I've ever seen, but certainly there is a potential for a tornado in this area. That now coming right across 80 and probably just south of Luling, coming towards Atine, and then also perhaps towards Harwood and Sandy Fork if it is still going at that time. Now, as we expand the picture out, all that area of orange, and this is what Mark was talking about a moment ago, that's where we're seeing very strong winds surging forward. Again, there are little kinks that have developed along that, so there could be brief spin-ups, but certainly there's a much broader damaging wind threat. We've been looking at some winds as high as 77 miles per hour in these velocities within the last, say, 10 minutes here. And that coming towards Beebe and Smiley and Gonzales as well, right across 183, looking at a very serious damaging wind threat along with that line of storms. So let's look at the bigger picture. And going through the rest of the night tonight, we're going to continue to see a really serious severe weather threat because you've got an incredibly energetic atmosphere. Even as we lose some of the instability, the heating of the day, what we continue to see is very strong winds aloft. And in fact, the winds are actually going to be getting stronger as we go deeper into the evening. And that strong wind aloft in the low levels of the atmosphere and the mid levels of the atmosphere, what that does is it increases the potential for damaging wind. Even if you don't have terribly strong storms or very tall storms, they don't have to go up very high to tap into that. So let's look at the model forecast. We've got that low level jet on here and show you how this is going to evolve most likely. Now you'll notice that we've got kind of a broken line here. So it's a line that is comprised of embedded supercells, and those embedded supercells are going to be entirely capable of producing tornadoes in addition to damaging winds going into late tonight. That's midnight tonight. You see that coming into Little Rock, moving into Shreveport, coming into the Houston area as well. Then we go into 4 o'clock in the morning, moving into Memphis and the Mississippi Valley and across central parts of Louisiana. Some supercells perhaps out ahead of that coming across western parts of Tennessee. So really, really important that you've got a way to be notified overnight tonight, Mark. You know, a lot of people turn their phones off as they go to bed. This would be a night to leave the phone on so you can get that warning overnight.
Yeah, and Carl, one thing that the National Weather Service out of Little Rock was just talking about that I don't think I've ever seen before is they're saying the winds just aloft are so strong, it's messing with their radar's velocity data. So they're pulling back the radar a bit, pulling back the distance so to get better picture to know where the tornadoes are because the wind itself is actually messing up the velocity. Just it shows you one more way to know how dynamic this storm is. And with the amount of rain that we've seen, we've got flood alerts from Dallas all the way to Watertown, New York, and almost everywhere in between, a likelihood of flooding within that area as well. So we've got this whole stretch of flash flood warnings to follow, as well as those severe and tornado warnings on that leading edge. But, you know, the rain is a big part of this story. We can look, you know, without the warnings, and we could without the severe warnings and just at the flood warnings and see how many there are. The Dallas area, the severe threat is done, but that rain continues, and the damage already done in that area. Lots of high water reports and rescues that were needed. Fort Smith, Arkansas, still seeing flood warnings, and the Springfield, Missouri area is getting a new shot of heavy rain. Look at all the reports of flooding that have already come in. That is bad news.
As a human ski lift, there's only one way.
Here on the Weather Channel.
Two clusters of severe warnings right now, connected by thousands of miles of lightning strikes along a very potent squall line, a line of storms trekking its way west to east that will impact most of the southern third of the nation by the time all is said and done this weekend. We're watching storms with warnings in northwest Arkansas. We're watching storms with warnings that are outside of San Antonio. Let's start out with a tornado warning here in northern portions of Arkansas. This is over portions of Newton and Searcy counties. A big kind of comma head curled shape to the storm, and you know where that comma head is, where that wind is kind of bending its way back into the storm and around, that's where we've seen some rotation. But look at the severe thunderstorm warning that has jumped out ahead of that storm. It's because of extraordinarily strong winds that are just off the deck, about 5,000 feet up or so. We're seeing winds screaming close to 90 miles per hour. It is not out of the question that those winds could be forced down to the surface, easily 70-mile-per-hour winds, and that's why these severe thunderstorm warnings are as prevalent as they are along this line of storms. A quick look at the rotation within this area. Right in here, where the reds and yellows are right next to the greens, we're pretty far away from the radar site that's down near Little Rock. And then this one's actually coming down from Springfield. But if we use the Little Rock site, you can see that there is this distinct connection or sheared area, maybe a chance for a tornado here because of that bending back. But we know that there is just ridiculous amounts of wind, and we're so far from the radar sites here that it's tough to tell you exactly where that tornado may be. The worst of the couplet is right in here, where that blue area is right next to the red. But anywhere in there could be a spin-up tornado. So definitely keep that in mind. If you're in Western Grove, this storm system is coming your way. Again, a huge line of severe thunderstorm warnings. Johnson, Logan, and Pope. Little Rock is here. You might be watching from Little Rock tonight going, the skies are basically, quiet. There's nothing at all. But, look out the windows off to the west, and that is the lightning that you see way off in the distance. Again, if you're in Little Rock and looking back out towards these storms, it is a significant, significant night. One other thing we can do is actually show you what it might look like using that 3D view from the Little Rock area and looking back at those storms. Those are the towers that are working their way down I-40, or really kind of diagonally along and through I-40. But again, if you're way out from the distance and you've got a sight line, there are huge towers of storms kind of crawling their way through the atmosphere. Moving down into Texas now, the line of storms came through San Antonio, basically through Austin, still some heavy rain there. We have a tornado warning over Caldwell and Gonzales. This is not looking as threatening as it was even a few moments ago. It's getting a little bit muddy with some pretty strong thunderstorm action out ahead of it. In fact, the outflow, the wind pushing from the storms that are moving west to east, is so strong, and there's so much moisture availability that we're seeing that new flare-up of thunderstorms out ahead of the main line because of that. But if I pause this for you, there's still at least a hint that we've got this kind of kink in the line right in here where there could be just enough of a circulation to give us a tornado with that. It's not nearly as clear as it was. There's this bend here, Carl, but it's something that we have to continue to watch for sure. But look at this line. There's a kink right here, one right here, one right here. You could argue one right here. There could be a tornado, a quick spin-up tornado at basically anywhere along that line. You got to respect the severe thunderstorm warnings tonight because of that. Whether it's the 70 to 90 mile per hour wind potential, or the fact that you could have a one-scan tornado with that as well. It's a dangerous night because
just
of that.
A really energetic atmosphere tonight. And where that moisture is wrapping into cold air, we are getting wintry weather, freezing rain, and some snow as well. And we're going to get a couple of rounds of this. As you look at this picture, it appears to be winding down more towards Kansas City, but that's a little bit of a head fake because we've got another round on the way here. And let's talk first of all about the radar and what's going on now. We're actually not getting a report of freezing rain in Kansas City. We did see that within the last hour. Actually had some moderate freezing rain in Kirksville, but not being reported right now. Freezing rain is being reported in Cedar Rapids as well as Ottumwa. We're also seeing that into Rockford, and it looks like it's just outside of Milwaukee right now. So we're looking for a 1/10 of an inch up and across I-70 in Missouri, getting towards Hannibal and Quincy, moving towards the Quad Cities there as well, and then on up into northern Illinois and into Rockford and all of those areas, and also in Michigan, all those areas. Really difficult travel through tonight and even into tomorrow. And in some spots, we could be talking about a 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation, especially there near Hannibal and Quincy, as well as into northern Illinois, again near Rockford, central parts of Michigan. In those spots, we might be looking at enough icing to actually cause some trees to sag down, maybe some power lines as well, so there could possibly be some power outages. Now, looking at the forecast for snowfall, it's mostly going to be lighter snowfall, but as I mentioned, there will be a couple of waves. You see how this is all really beginning to fill in again tomorrow morning with the second wave that is coming through. That is slowly going to come up and across the middle Mississippi Valley, and then we expect to see snow eventually making its way into Chicago by tomorrow evening. Could be a few inches, a little bit more on the north side of town. We'll have much more coming up.
Now only at Domino's for
what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Really intense stuff tonight as storms are plunging their way west to east through the center of the country. This is San Antonio about an hour ago as the storms came through. You can just see just how much heavy rain there is in the little bit of light that we have in this video. The winds are whipping the leaves off the tree. I know it's winter and there's not that many leaves left, but it's an active pattern. How about towards Gatesville, Texas tonight, where there was also hail mixed in for some good measure, as if the flooding and the 70+ mile-per-hour winds wasn't enough. How about some pea-sized hail thrown at your car windows just for good measure? And you can also see the lightning flashes in this video. The severe potential tonight is far-reaching. If you're just joining us, thanks for tuning in. We're going to follow along with you over the next several hours. I say we. I'm meteorologist Mark Elliott. Waiting in the wings is meteorologist Carl Parker. He'll be talking about these storms as well and timing them out for you so you know what to expect for the rest of the night into tomorrow. Let's talk about the watches that are out. First, a tornado watch continues until 2 a.m. This is for portions of southern Missouri into Arkansas, stretching down through Shreveport, northeast Texas, included in that. There has been a bit of a local extension to the tornado watch east of Dallas towards Buffalo along I-45. This now goes until midnight local time. The Dallas area is no longer in the tornado potential, but there is still some rain, and we know there's been some flooding already around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So a little bit more rain goes a long way to make that recovery from that high water last that much longer. And then we look at the severe thunderstorm watch area, goes from Austin to San Antonio. Big storms here, lots of wind energy. You can kind of extrapolate this down. Houston, Victoria, Corpus Christi may all be next in line. The Storm Prediction Center is watching those areas for where we could have the next watch come out. So it's a watch, if you will. Now, as we look at the long kind of collection of the radar picture here, the real driving force has been the lightning from St. Louis all the way to San Antonio, and just about everywhere in between. There is a constant shield of lightning within this area. Kind of within that, there are two main areas with severe warnings. We've got the northwestern and west central side of Arkansas with severe thunderstorm warnings and a tornado warning embedded within that as well. And then we have this area outside of San Antonio with warnings. Otherwise, it's a lot of lightning, and lightning strikes are always severe. You're not going to get a severe thunderstorm warning just because of lightning. Every lightning strike is severe, so please respect that tonight. Look at the bowing feature that we have on this storm. This is northern Arkansas, pointed towards Mountain Home and Marshall. When you have those kinds of bowing features, it indicates very strong winds, pushing that radar signature forward. That's what is giving you that shape to the rain because of the wind behind it, the rain-cooled air surging forward. Marion, Searcy, Van Buren, all in that severe thunderstorm warning for those very gusty winds, and so much so that the radar is actually having a little bit of trouble figuring out just how strong those winds are, but you can see the clear shift from the greens and blues and not much action out ahead of it to a a distinct switch to the colors, to the greens and then reds. That is because of the very strong wind potential with these storms. Let's move just a little bit further south and kind of a wider view. Johnson, Logan, and Pope, a severe thunderstorm warning. And then kind of due west of Little Rock by a good bit, we've got Montgomery, Scott, and Yell. This is all that one line of storms working through western portions of Arkansas with the potential is there for just huge amounts of wind, 70, 80, 90 mile per hour gusts, not out of the question. New severe thunderstorm warning has also been issued on that line that we've been following in central Texas, working its way straight down I-10. I think the saving grace here is that the wind direction is parallel to the highway. So you're not going to have the type of wind that immediately takes out high-profile vehicles that happen to be traveling in this area and don't know that the storms are headed their way, because the winds are going to be going with the highway direction or, directly against the highway travel direction, depending on if you're going east or west, I suppose. But that new warning has been issued for Fayette, Gonzales, and Lavaca counties. Houston is right here, so we're starting to, get the idea that Houston could be next with this line of storms approaching. Again, the biggest threat here will be the gusty winds, but embedded within this line, we can't completely rule out the chance for brief spin-up tornadoes. Let's kind of look at this line and so you see what we look at. This is the velocity mode of the radar, the motion of the raindrops, and where you have these little surges forward and these kinks in the line. When those get a little bit tighter, a little bit more robust, that's just enough to say that there could be tornadoes that spin up on those kind of surges forward and on those northern edges. Not tight enough yet, not something that's immediate, but the potential is there. And with that, as we go through tonight, Carl, you're going to talk more about this, but there's a huge zone of wind potential as we go through the night along that surging line of thunderstorms.
Yeah, one thing that's really got us concerned is the fact that the wind fields are actually going to be getting stronger through the night tonight. So in a lot of cases, you see a real decrease in instability as you get deeper into the evening. Instability is going to be declining, but at the same time, the winds, the low-level winds in particular, are going to be getting a lot stronger. So the net of those two things is that the severe threat is going to continue well into the overnight, even into tomorrow morning, and then into tomorrow afternoon. Now, I want to show you this low-level jet that we're talking about. There are a couple of things that this does. One is that it keeps the shear very strong, so there's a lot of rotation with a very strong wind with a low-level wind. You see that white color? That's that low-level jet sharpening up there and getting up to 80 to 90 to maybe 100 miles per hour. That's at 5,000 feet. And so if you've got 90 mile per hour wind at 5,000 feet, even a modest storm can tap into that, perhaps begin to rotate or begin to transfer some of that momentum down to the ground. So that's going to be one of the big worries going through the night tonight. Let's look at the model forecast. We've got that low-level jet superimposed on this model forecast. So you notice this really broken line here. So basically you've got embedded supercells coming through Arkansas, coming into Little Rock midnight tonight, getting through the Arklatex, coming into Shreveport as well. We see some discrete cells out ahead of that main line, and those discrete cells, those individual cells, are going to be more capable of producing tornadoes, so you really want to keep your eyes on those. We see more of that into parts of Mississippi and Tennessee into the overnight tonight, 4 o'clock in the morning. So if you normally put your phone by your bed and you turn it off so it's not beaming radio waves into your head, which a lot of people do, one thing you can do is just leave it on, maybe put it a little farther away from the bed, leave it on tonight. So if you get a warning, you'll be able to hear that warning, you'll be able to react to it, especially if you're in these areas out ahead of that line, Mississippi as well as Tennessee, parts of Louisiana overnight tonight. Tomorrow morning, we've got this screaming low-level jet. I mean, it's going to be flying by tomorrow morning. So, again, even if you've got more modest storms that are developing in parts of Tennessee and Mississippi, even if they're not that strong or that tall, they don't have to be really tall to tap into that wind and to transfer that to the ground. So there's going to be an ongoing, widespread damaging wind threat that will make its way into Nashville, into Starkville, as well as Hattiesburg by around the middle of the morning. Also notice notice these discrete cells that are popping up in southern parts of Alabama. There will be more instability farther south, and again, the wind fields are getting sharper, so we could be talking about some tornado warnings going through the morning tomorrow as well. There we go into the middle of the day, scattered cells coming across Alabama, and eventually into late afternoon, line starts to get into northwest Georgia, and you've got some discrete cells there in the southern part of the state as well, and then it comes through the Atlanta metro about 6 to 7 o'clock tomorrow night. So it's going to be a long period of severe weather, a prolonged period of a damaging wind threat and a tornado threat with those embedded supercells. That's the area of concern for severe thunderstorms for tomorrow. It is very broad. You notice it tapers a bit as you get farther out to the east. We're going to lose a lot of the instability in this area as you get into Georgia and the Carolinas, not nearly as much of the instability there. We've got a 6 out of 10 on the Torcon for southern parts of Mississippi and also Louisiana, a 5 for central Mississippi and Alabama, and then we've got 4s for South Georgia, northern Florida, as well as northern Alabama and Mississippi. It could be a very active day tomorrow, so make sure you stay tuned for the Weather Channel. We're going to give you the very latest on all of this severe weather. Let's also talk about the severe threat, and we'll also want to take you into the Dallas area. Storms rolling through the Dallas area earlier tonight. The Weather Channel's Tevin Wooten was there with a look at the conditions.
Welcome into North Texas, where it's been a very volatile day for severe weather. We've had ripe conditions for tornadoes, severe thunderstorm warnings, and even the potential for colder temperatures on the backside of this system as well. So quite an interesting setup here when we consider the atmosphere and what it can do and what it has done for us on a Friday and pushing into Saturday here. This is a steady stream of rainfall, perhaps the steadiest rainfall and heaviest rainfall that we've seen throughout Dallas, Texas today. We also had a few tornado warnings throughout the area in Dallas County and Tarrant County near the DFW airport as well. I mean, look at the roadways right now, soaked with rainfall here. This has been ongoing for about 30 or 40 minutes or so. There's also a game tonight, the Lakers versus the Mavericks, so a lot of people are rushing into the American Airlines Center as quickly as possible to dodge the downpours that we have here near Victory Park. So what can we expect after this line clears through? Cooler temperatures into our Saturday with temperatures close to 45 degrees for highs. The lowest temperatures of tomorrow expected to be right near freezing. That's the latest here from Dallas-Fort Worth. Let's send it back to you.
All right, Tevin, thank you very much. And let's tell you about a new tornado watch that has come out from the Storm Prediction Center. This in effect for southeast Texas, including the Houston metro area, going until 4 o'clock in the morning. Now, at this point, a lot of the models indicating that storms are going to be coming through around 11 to 12 to 1 a.m. to 2, depending on where you are in the metro. So more towards 11 p.m. if you're in the northwest side of the metro, out towards Katy there, and then into the center of town, getting towards midnight to 1 a.m., and then more out towards the Ship Channel, as well as the Gulf Freeway there and Galveston getting towards 2 a.m. But they certainly could be tornado-producing storms. We've been talking about the fact that there's a terrific amount of wind shear in the atmosphere. This is one of those nights when you really want to be on your toes, because we very well, Mark, could be looking at tornado warnings going through the night tonight. Also, flash flooding, another big concern with this storm, is there are some areas that are just getting hammered right now.
Yeah, I've seen some rainfall rates outside of the Little Rock area where you're in 3 hours time are seeing 3 inches of rain, and it's still raining there.
Can you believe the way this guy charges through that water? That always shocks me when I see that.
And it's person after person after person here.
You know, and if you're in a truck, I mean, you've got a fighting shot, I guess. You've got a chance. But this guy in the car does that, and all it takes is, you know, you get up into what, maybe 1.5 feet, 2 feet, you start getting water into the intake there,
yeah,
and it could be game over for the engine. Yeah.
As soon as that water goes up into the engine, everything shuts off, and you've totaled your car.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've got a loss of property and money and time, but I mean, long enough.
You know, when they say, well, you saw water was, you know, covering the road, what did you do? Well, I decided to just charge right through it.
At some point, there's going to be new addendums onto all these policies that say, if there's a barricade within a certain radius, if there's water over a road and a normal person would know that there was water on the road, then this isn't covered. How you prove that after the fact, well, you've got to then be unfortunate enough to have it caught on video. But it's going to happen at some point. Please stop doing it, guys. Just find another way to get home. It's not worth your time, your money, or your safety to do that. And unfortunately, at night, it's that much more difficult. You have no ability to see how much water is on the road, or if the road is actually even still there under you, because, hey, let's face it, those roads are built in layers, and as the water gets into there, it can sweep out that base layer of the road. The weight of your car can be enough to break through the pavement, kind of like a pothole would form, except on a much grander scale. If you're above a ravine that you didn't even know was there, your car could be the thing that plunges you through, and then you wind up really in trouble. Flash flooding concerns through the night. Little Rock, Memphis, Springfield, Paducah. As we head into tomorrow, flood watch is also a risk. Indianapolis to Toledo to Buffalo to Watertown. Areas that normally this time of year we're talking about blizzard conditions and lake effect snow have the potential to have flooding because of the really kind of warm, unseasonably warm, and honestly a little bit scarily warm air mass that's moving through the eastern third of the nation. For tonight into tomorrow, a likelihood of flash flooding in eastern Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas, southern Missouri. It's this area that continues to see the flood warnings, continues to see the very heavy rainfall. Again, this leading edge is where we've got the severe thunderstorm warnings, occasional tornado warnings, but the steady rain behind it is nothing to mess around with. Look at what's happening around the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The main show for severe is done, but look at all this light rain that's still building back in over Dallas-Fort Worth. And considering all the reports that we had of flooding near the hospital, flooding off of 35 earlier with roads closed, more rain is not what you need in that region. How about Fort Smith? Fort Smith, Arkansas, still under a flash flood warning. The rain showing no signs of letting up. We don't have any active flood reports coming out of Fort Smith, but we have had some in southern portions of Oklahoma, outside McAllister, north of Bromide. So those types of warnings could come your way. Springfield, Missouri, I'm really starting to get more and more worried about. The rainfall rates here continue to fill in. If you look at the 3-hour accumulations, it's not too bad. You go into 6 hours, though, and you start seeing the darker greens and the yellows. Yellows, 3 to 5 inches of rain. And it's really coming down there still. So if that winds up over a low-lying area or those rainfall rates continue, flooding woes will continue.
As a human ski lift, there's only one way to refuel.
The DQ. Miss all new episodes of Highway Through Hell, Sunday nights at 8, here on the Weather Channel.
It is a cold and rainy night here in northern Illinois. Temperatures in the mid-30s. We're about 45 miles as the crow flies from the lakefront in Chicago, northwest, out here in McHenry County, not far from the Wisconsin line. And this rain eventually is going to change to some freezing rain and sleet before it goes over to snow on Saturday. The entire Chicagoland area will change to snow by later in the afternoon as temperatures fall to and below freezing, not only here but up in the clouds. And the worst weather by far, the combination of snow and blowing snow and those winds, which will gust upwards of 40 miles an hour, maybe even 50-mile-an-hour gusts on the lakefront tomorrow evening, will kick in, and the roads will go downhill very quickly after sundown Saturday evening. Big impacts, too, at O'Hare already late Friday night. 300 flights canceled. That's about 15% of the inventory in and out of O'Hare. Expect more cancellations. By the way, the storm pulls out of the way. and the snow is out of the way, and the skies are partly cloudy, about 30, back to average. It's been very warm in January. That's the high on Sunday. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel, the Weather Channel, McHenry, Illinois.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. And we're watching a couple of waves of wintry weather. One is coming through right now. We're seeing some freezing rain in parts of Missouri as well as into Iowa, and there's going to be another round of that tomorrow. So all told, there could be some areas that get as much as 1/4 inch of ice accumulation. That, of course, is enough to cause more than just problems on the roads, maybe actually some power outages, and I'll show you where that could be in a moment. So you notice it appears to be sort of winding down there in Kansas City. That's the end of wave 1, but the second wave is going to come through overnight and early tomorrow. It's going to fill all of that back in. I'll show you that in just a moment. Looking at the radar right now, we're not seeing anything being reported in Kansas City right now. We are getting some light freezing rain in Kirksville, also getting some freezing rain in Ottumwa, as well as into Cedar Rapids. We've seen that in Rockford. That continues in Rockford at this hour. Looks like it's also just outside of Milwaukee, and not seeing any reporting stations showing that right now. But those are the areas that are going to continue to be targeted going through the night tonight, looking at the potential for 1/10 inch or more over a pretty broad area. But you notice where it's centered there in northern Missouri towards Hannibal and Quincy, getting up towards the Quad Cities. And then when we look at this potential for 1/4 inch or more, that is actually going to be highest in the central part of Michigan. And once you get to that level, that's the point at which you start to see the trees, the tree limbs kind of being weighed down by that ice, and the power lines being weighed down by that ice. So that's when you get into the territory where you might actually lose some power, and that's something that we're going to be concerned about. Snow's not going to be real heavy. It's mostly going to be light. But again, we're going to get another round that comes through tonight and into tomorrow. There will be some spots, notably northern Michigan, that do see several inches of snow. Now, here is wave number 1 coming through. Then wave number 2 starts to really fill things in into tomorrow morning. We're getting snow there in Oklahoma City, into Kansas City. And then as it lifts up, that's going to come across the 44 corridor, across I-70 and I-80. It's going to change everything over there in Chicago. And so the best chance of heavier snow is going to be on the north side of Chicago, maybe 5 to 6 inches there. That's going to begin to wind down, we think, by tomorrow evening. So certainly a lot of areas where travel is going to be difficult, but the timing's pretty good, Mark, happening on a weekend as most people could just stay in and sit tight.
Yeah, it is just a wild transition, though, with this storm system going through. The fact that we've had severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings that now are ending as freezing drizzle and then snow is just an incredible change.
It's like a spring storm in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Think about it, like a shoulder season storm.
It feels a lot like March. Maybe a little bit more snow than you typically see out of a March storm.
Yeah.
But the amount of severe weather and the changeover that we've seen kind of as that front comes through really does feel like a kind of early spring transition season storm. There is a distinct severe side still. We're not done. I know there is a named winter storm. We're talking about the wintry weather, but severe weather is stealing a lot of the headlines. 3 different tornado watches that we're looking at. One, north of that white line that I drew, goes until 2 a.m. That includes Shreveport, Texarkana, up through Little Rock and southern portions of Missouri. Then we can follow into kind of east central Texas, a tornado watch until midnight. The newest tornado watch is actually over the Houston area. Goes all the way through Galveston, of course, and goes until 4 a.m. So overnight tornado threat. And then a severe thunderstorm watch still in place south of all of those tornado watches, Austin, San Antonio, down close to the Corpus Christi area. When you look at the wide view here, the amount of lightning that we're seeing along this line is really telling. This is a dynamic storm, a very strong front. In that strong front, we are seeing this bowing segment of storms coming across northern portions of Arkansas. Very strong winds headed towards 65 there, a state route on Highway 65. Now, the newest warning is getting ever closer to Little Rock, the northwest side, under severe thunderstorm warnings. It's not even raining in those counties yet, but we know the wind is headed that way. We're talking wind gusts that could be 50, 60, even 70 plus as this very organized part of that line of storms goes through northern and central Arkansas.
Resolve to get organized.
Is to help millions more people like me.
Some new video to show you here tonight at the Weather Channel where the hail was really coming down. Austin, Texas, I don't believe Austin ever had a severe thunderstorm warning. That hail is small enough that it's probably not doing much damage. It's certainly making a racket out there. The rain is considerable. The lightning flashes were almost constant, but you avoided some of the worst potential weather. That is the good news for those of you across the Austin area. But, you know, enough hail that's filling that patio table pretty considerably. Then we go into Fairplay, Missouri, and it's a muddy sky there, Carl. I want to bring you in on this, but sure looks like a lowering there, moving right to left across your screen. And when, you know, Dr. Forbes used to like to say, if the clouds look like they're at least halfway down to the ground, chances are good that the circulation is on the ground.
Yeah, you know, and it's a lot harder to see in this case. You can see something right there. That's sort of a V shape right there. That's what's so interesting about tornadoes a lot of the time, is that when they're right on you like that, and they're not exceptionally well defined or illuminated by, you know, light or you know, filled with debris, then it can be sort of amorphous. It's kind of difficult to tell where it starts and where it stops. But
you've got those rain curtains going by too, and it looks like there's a spin just to the rain. And so I would argue that that might be your best indicator. If you watch the kind of rain shield, it almost looks like it's moving away from you, on the left side of your screen, and then racing right to left.
Yes, a little bit of inflow
on the right
there.
side of the screen. So I would argue that that's probably a tornado.
Yeah. You know, and this goes to, you know, what makes tornadoes so dangerous in the South in particular. So often they've got very low cloud bases, the storms that produce the tornadoes. You've got rain wrapping into the tornadoes. You've got a lot of tree cover as well. And so when all of those things conspire, it's very difficult to tell exactly what you're seeing until it's on you.
Having your exit strategy, if you're out there near storms, is so crucial, and the road network is not in a grid. There's hills in the way, there's trees in the way, and so, you know, basically from southern Missouri down through the southeast, seeing and tracking these tornadoes is much more difficult than if you're in the center of the country. Not impossible, and we use the radar and the technology to help, but it is not the same beast as if you're, say, in western portions of Kansas. Now, tonight, the threat is moving into that Dixie Alley, the area where, through the southeast, where climatology would say that this is where we would expect to see more tornadoes. At the moment, and I hope I'm not jinxing anybody, the tornado threat is a little bit lower, you know, momentarily. Better to be lucky than good, I suppose, because the wind speed, the wind shift through the atmosphere is still extraordinarily strong. You know, the winds coming up out of the surface, you can see out here with these kind of light showers and storms coming off the Gulf, that wind is all out of the south and east. Aloft from there, at 5,000 feet up, it's due south. So we've already got a bit of a wind shift. And then behind our storm system, the winds are going this way. So even more dramatic a wind shift. That whole spin through the atmosphere, bottom to top, can be ingested by these big storms and give you the potential for tornadoes. Now, right now, we're watching very strong straight line winds, and that's going to be a big component. Carl's going to talk more about why that could even be worse through the rest of the night. But just look at this line of storms from northern Arkansas down to near the Little Rock area. They're still saying that tornadoes are possible along this line from the Little Rock office here because there's all these little kinks in the line, right? All through here where there's these bends, there can be spin-up tornadoes. And the whole line has so much shear that you can't rule out those brief spin-up tornadoes. Sometimes they start and end in one scan of the radar, about as fast as a person can signal the technology to alert everybody of a tornado warning. So very fast changing conditions. But Carl, just an indicator of the power of that wind shift. Look at the line. Look at the separation between the greens and the reds and yellows there. Whew, there is quite the windy outcome there where the wind shift occurs.
Yeah, that yellow and orange is showing you the low-level jet there, and that's a big part of what's going to be driving this severe threat through the night tonight. Very strong low-level winds will continue, and let's take a look at the radar going forward along with that low-level wind, and we expect that there's going to be a damaging wind threat and a tornado threat that goes well through the night tonight. So there you see 10 o'clock tonight. We're going to take this a little farther forward into midnight. I want you to know notice how many of these cells are broken up here. So we're not looking at a linear system so much as we are looking at a line of storms with embedded supercells all along the line. So we'll see an ongoing tornado threat and damaging wind threat coming into Little Rock at midnight, coming towards Memphis, Tennessee, going into 5 o'clock in the morning. If you're in eastern Arkansas, western Mississippi, parts of Louisiana, you definitely want to be on your toes all night long tonight, as there could be warnings overnight tonight. And then even early tomorrow morning, we could be looking at some supercells coming across eastern Mississippi and towards Nashville, Tennessee. Much more in the severe weather coming up.
We're Oscar Mayer Deli Fresh.
Overwhelms, Vraylar helps smooth the ups and downs.
We have a new tornado warning to tell you about right now in central parts of Texas, and this is in effect for Burleson County going until 10 p.m. Watching a little kink on a line here that is now west of College Station, and so right in there is some potential for a tornado near Caldwell. That's now moving off to the northeast. Let's track that forward. The other thing that we're really noticing here is that there's a terrific amount of wind that is showing up in this velocity data. So possibly a tornado coming towards Tunis, but we're seeing some tremendous wind aloft right in this area near Caldwell. Look at that. That's 81-mile-per-hour wind that is just off the ground by a few thousand feet. And so we're looking at a very serious damaging wind potential in addition to the possibility of a tornado in that area near Caldwell. So just tracking that forward. That's going to be coming towards College Station by about 10:11, into Cooks Point 9:46, Somerville 9:54, and Gay Hill by about the top of the hour. Very, very strong wind on the way here. And larger picture, there's now a tornado watch in effect covering southeast Texas going until 4 o'clock in the morning. Some really strong storms coming into Houston, we think probably about midnight to 1 a.m. Central Time. All right, let's take a look at what's going on in Kansas City. And we had some freezing rain tonight, enough to coat the trees and the power lines. It certainly has been a tricky night across a lot of the Central Plains as well as the Midwest. We are not now getting any reports of freezing rain, but look at that. You know, it's a beautiful thing, but of course it's a real hassle to deal with on the roads. And when it gets heavy enough on those trees and the power lines, we begin to see them snap, and that takes out our power. And that is going to be a worry tonight in parts of Missouri, and especially up into Michigan. I'll show you that in the forecast. So right now we're seeing some light snow for the most part in Iowa. Also getting some freezing rain now in northern parts of Missouri and Kirksville. Freezing rain also being reported up into Wetumpka in Iowa and Cedar Rapids and in Rockford, Illinois. It's a lot of these same areas that are going to see that through the night tonight. This is where we expect to see a 1/10 of an inch or more of ice accumulation, so a glaze basically enough to cause problems on the roads. That's going to be in northern Missouri, into Hannibal, and also into Quincy, and then up towards the Quad Cities, and then across into Michigan. But in Michigan, it's probably going to be a little more profound, so that's where we see a bullseye of potential for 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation. And again, that's the point at which we start to see real problems with power lines coming down, with tree limbs coming down. So just be aware of that around Lansing and over into the Thumb there. We could be talking about some power outages going through the night tonight and tomorrow. The snowfall for the most part is going to be light, but there will be some areas that get more, especially in northern Michigan. The storm actually has a couple of waves. Wave number 1 is right in there. It's coming through right now. And then we watch wave number 2 beginning to fill things in into tomorrow morning. And so we'll get snow in Oklahoma City with that coming right up and across southeast Kansas. And then eventually we're going to see a transition in Chicago. Snow fattens up there in Kansas City as well as into Springfield around the middle of the day tomorrow. Then it's going to be ending into the afternoon. Transitioning in Chicago, we'll probably get a little bit of everything, a little freezing rain, a little sleet, and then some snow. And that'll go on through the evening and then wind down by tomorrow night. So at this point, it looks like the greatest potential for some slightly heavier snow is going to be on the north side of Chicago, probably about 5 to 6 inches there. But on the south side, it's not going to be very much because the transition is going to happen later, and then it's all going to be winding down going into late evening to some lingering snow into early Sunday there in parts of Michigan. All right, we want to turn it over to Mark now. We're going to talk a little bit more about the severe weather and the flood potential as well.
Yeah, and sometimes both at the same time.
Yeah.
Going on across much of Arkansas right now. It's a very difficult night. You're looking at the Conway area. Conway just northwest of Little Rock, right along I-40. And there is some steady rain, as you can see on the pictures here from the Arkansas Department of Transportation. Not too far away from Conway, back towards the west, we actually have a brand new tornado warning that has been issued. So here's Conway in the rain that you were just seeing on that DOT camera. So Conway's right in here, but we have this new tornado warning to tell you about. It does include portions of Conway County, Pope, and Yell. This is one of those kinks in the line. You can see it right in here, how we have that distinct hook, that distinct kind of change in the presentation, the shape of the radar returns. And so within that, right in here, that's where we are seeing at least some signs that we have a tornado. This is one of the stronger couplets that we've seen recently just outside of Danville. Let's zoom in on that for you. Look at that. Look at that couplet and really the wind pattern that comes with it. That red color bending in like this. That is the air moving away from the radar. The radar is in the Little Rock area, so that's off to the south and east from here. Meanwhile, you have that green wind. The green colored wind is wind that's moving towards the radar, surging forward, even a stronger couplet now. So maybe a tornado. Let's see if we have anything being lofted into the air in that area. The good news is that there's no clear sign yet on the correlation coefficient that we have any debris being thrown into the air. What's the radar's hitting at the moment is largely meteorological, symmetrical objects, rain, and heavy rain at that. But that could change in a big way, could change in a hurry, which is why we've got this warning. Let's time out that warning for you as we can move that off towards the north and east, close to about 45 to 50 miles per hour. It'll be heading towards Prosperity, close to the top of the hour, close to 10 o'clock local time, could then get up towards Dardanelle or Russellville just after the top of the hour. Again, these types of warnings move really quickly. It's tough to say that it's going to hold together quite that long, but what we know is that in this bend in the line and in the kink right in here, we have the potential for a tornado right now. So if you're east of Danville, please put as many walls between you and the storm as possible.
With Domino's 5
to TV News Network, the Weather Channel.
Welcome back to the Weather Channel as we are following a line of very active weather, and unfortunately that's putting it lightly, moving through Arkansas, then bending all the way down to Texas. Within that line, we've got very heavy rain, we've got constant lightning, and embedded severe weather, including severe thunderstorm warnings and tornado warnings. The rain that you're looking at there in Conway is actually out ahead of the main line. Conway itself is right in here. Little Rock is right here, as well as that black circle. That is the Little Rock radar site that we're using to look back at these storms off to the west from Little Rock and marching steadily in. A very strong signature for gusty straight line winds from northern Arkansas like this, and then again into central Arkansas like this. Where those two meet, there's been enough of an inflow that we've had at least a chance of brief spin-up tornadoes. That's why we've got a tornado warning kind of inside those severe thunderstorm warning areas, Conway, Pope, and Yell counties. Let's get a little bit of a closer view to that area. We've got the inflow air coming in like this bit of a notching there, and then the rain-cooled air wrapping back around. So if there's going to be a tornado, there could be one there. There could also be one in here. So let's take a look at the movement of the raindrops, and those are lined up pretty well. We've got the red and green couplet area right here, where the green air is moving in here, but the red is surging away from the radar site right there, so there could be a circulation there, and a similar pattern right here. These types of signatures move very quickly. They could be there for a scan or two and then fizzle on out, replaced by just the prevalent flow, which is that strong, generally west to east wind tonight. As these progress, though, they often bend their way up the line. And so, in theory, you would not see this bending south, for example, towards Perryville. Instead, it would work its way up the line, kind of east of Russellville, which is why the shape of the tornado warning looks like this, while the severe thunderstorm warnings are much more west to east. It's because that tornado potential could be bending northbound. So that's the kind of stuff that we're looking at tonight across the Arkansas area. Moving out just a bit again to show you what's coming towards Little Rock. This line of storms is really apparent, and we could have some very strong wind conditions. Let's time out those winds for you across basically much of the state. We'll draw in the general shape of this area and send it through Little Rock. It'll be there by about 11:30. Now, there's wiggle room on this. I wouldn't say, oh, we don't have to worry until then. There could be storms that happen out ahead of it. But this is something that we have to continue to follow, that very strong wind potential moving towards the Little Rock area. We've also seen all kinds of flooding potential tonight with repeated storms over the same areas again and again and again. A look at the heavy rain threat that's still in play tonight from North Texas all the way up towards the Great Lakes and just about everywhere in between. We've had training thunderstorms. We've had repeated thunderstorms. Through tomorrow morning, we're talking about the potential for flash flooding that's overnight tonight into early tomorrow. North Texas, eastern Arkansas, sorry, I keep saying that, eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas, and southwestern portions of Missouri, a likelihood of flooding. We've already seen a good bit of flooding in that area, and it is still raining. Look at this shield where we've got all those flash flood warnings. It's still raining within there. The forward progress of this line is not that fast, so we will have more flash flood concerns as it moves eastbound. Remember, Little Rock, you get into the pavement area, you add this kind of rain over pavement, you're going to have a problem. And, you know, part of this, Carl, is that we've got these tornado warnings that are just about on top of the flash flood warning. So that changes what you should do. Of course, for either one of those warnings, we need you to get off the roads. But if water is entering your home, you need to take shelter in the most interior room that you have that's on the lowest dry level. Don't go down into the basement if the basement is taking on water. These are types of things that we don't have to talk about all that often, that it doesn't overlap quite like this all that often, but tonight's one of those times.
Yeah, that's also a concern that we see with hurricanes as well.
Yes, yeah.
Certainly something to think about. All right, let's take a look at what's going on in Texas right now as we're watching a tornado warning in Burleson County, not very far away from College Station. I'm not seeing a real profound rotation at this time, but what we are seeing is some really strong straight line wind here showing up in that yellow and almost brownish color. Let's query that area right there. Look at that. That's a velocity of 92 miles per hour. Now, that's aloft, so that's not what's happening on the ground necessarily, but when you've got very heavy rain there, which we certainly do, much of that velocity can be carried down to the ground. So it would not be surprising to see 70 to maybe 80 mile per hour wind in this area. In fact, there is a warning now for 70 mile per hour wind. So let's track this forward. And you notice there are little kinks here as well. There's a little kink right there, little kink right there. So there certainly is some potential for a tornado, but I think the greater threat, the larger threat right now is the damaging wind threat, and that is now making its way into Somerville as we speak. Not very far away from College Station, be coming up into Bryan and College Station in about 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so. We're going to be looking at some exceptionally strong winds coming your way Again, could be 70 and possibly even 80 mile per hour wind as that moves through. Farther south, looking at warning here in Fayette and Lee County, and there is now a tornado watch in the Houston metro area that is going until 4 o'clock in the morning. We'll talk more about the timing coming up in a few minutes.
Humira patient.
5% off that stay. Expect better. Expect Hilton.
Some new video for you tonight as the intense line of storms came through Austin. You got some hail mixed in for good measure. Small, not large enough hail there to get a severe thunderstorm warning out of this, but just buckets of rain coming down. And especially when you look out into the distance, you can see just how much rain is coming down. Some lightning strikes as well. Whew, that was quite the line of storms that came through the Austin area, now headed towards College Station, and we'll talk more about you in just a second. Right now in Hot Springs, Arkansas, severe thunderstorm warning in place. You can occasionally see some of those lightning strikes off in the distance. This view is going to change dramatically over the next several minutes to a half an hour. It is going to take a bit for these storms to march their way in, but they've got a lot of rain and a lot of lightning with them as they approach the Hot Springs area. The wide view of the radar really does show you the themes that we're watching tonight. These kind of more meager showers and storms coming in off the Gulf of Mexico. Look at the direction of these. Now starting to get some that are tall enough to separate some charges, some lightning. But the point here, moving from southeast to northwest. You look at the storms along our front, they're going this way. That's feeling the upper air aloft along and behind our front. And in between, there's yet another area of wind that's moving almost due south. That big spin, that change with wind direction in the atmosphere is going to continue to support these storms through the night and continue to give us that chance for severe weather. Want to start out just north of Little Rock through the rest of northern Arkansas. Look at the kind of bowing signature that we have on this storm through Mountain Home, Baxter and Stone counties included here. As we take a look at the motion of those raindrops, and we can try to query this for you a bit. It's a bit tough because we're far from the, yeah, it's not going to do it. They've actually changed the mode of their radar because of the winds aloft. It was just they're too strong, and then you can't see what you need to see for the motion of the storms closer to the radar site. So, but we know that there are very strong winds with that line of storms. Here's Conway, now under a severe thunderstorm warning, not for the rain that you have in town, but for the rain that's approaching from the west. These are very strong thunderstorms that are moving in, again, with very strong winds. And here's Hot Springs. We showed you Hot Springs just a bit ago on that DOT camera. This is the line of storms that we are watching. If it were daytime and you were taking a look at this from kind of, just standing out there and looking out towards the west, you would see this wall of thunderstorm action coming your way. Look at this line. This has got some decent height to it. That's why we're, separating out those charges. If you're in Little Rock, if you're in Hot Springs and looking back out towards the west, those are the storms that you are seeing right now with those huge towers approaching the area. Again, I'm going to kind of turn the camera for you just a bit. So if you are in Little Rock or Hot Springs and looking west, that is kind of the shape of the storms that are coming your way. Each one of these towers that's been going up, that's the updraft. They're all tilted just a bit from straight up and down. They're not raining down on themselves. They're allowing for these storms to continue to basically last and push their way through the region. So again, here's Little Rock and the radar site, and this is that line of storms where everybody along that line is getting a severe thunderstorm warning tonight. These happen to be in Garland, Montgomery, and Perry, lasting until 10:45. Little Rock, you're next. It's not going to be too much longer before we wind up with a severe thunderstorm warning or potentially even tornado warnings for you in the Little Rock area. A quick jump down towards the south. This is well east now of Austin, where Fayette and Lee has a severe thunderstorm warning. A new severe thunderstorm warning also towards Huntsville, and the College Station area will be, feeling these storms sooner rather than later. Here's College Station, and Carl, we were just watching that. It is really going to be gnarly in College Station pretty soon with this line of storms approaching.
Yeah, I mean, you're talking about probably about 5-10 minutes at the very most there. And we have just been looking at some winds of 80+ miles per hour in the velocity data. So they are very, very strong storms here because you've got so much wind in the atmosphere. And that's actually going to be increasing overnight tonight. So even though we're going to be losing some instability, the low-level winds will be stepping up. And so the net effect is that the severe threat will continue right through the overnight, right into tomorrow morning. Let's talk about how that low-level jet is going to be shaping up. This is a big part of what drives the damaging wind threat and also the tornado threat. When you've got really strong winds in the low levels of the atmosphere, and by tomorrow morning they're going to be 80, 90, 100 miles per hour in the lowest 5,000 feet of the atmosphere, excuse me, about 5,000 to 10,000 feet up in the atmosphere. That's where we're going to be looking at these incredibly strong winds. And so what that means is even more modest storms can tap into that and produce damaging straight line wind, but also that very strong wind creates the wind shear that is necessary to create rotation and get these storms rotating, which is why you see the structure that we do in the modeling. You look at this at 11 o'clock tonight, we see a lot of discrete cells here that are out ahead of this line, and then within the line itself, a lot of embedded supercell structures. So many of these storms showing some at least brief signs of rotation. One thing that's missing is instability. We're not seeing a terrific amount of it. So they may be brief spin-ups and they may be more low-top storms, not really profoundly tall thunderstorms. But with all of that wind energy in the atmosphere, that is enough certainly to bring us sporadic tornado warnings as well as severe thunderstorms that produce damaging wind and maybe really strong wind. And as I mentioned, right through the night tonight. So midnight tonight, that's coming into Little Rock. That's coming into Shreveport. We are still seeing some of those discrete cell structures out ahead of the line. You really want to pay attention to those for tornado potential. 5 o'clock in the morning, still seeing these discrete cells, parts of Tennessee and also into Mississippi and Louisiana. You want to have a way to be notified. Your cell phone should do it in most cases. Just have some way to wake up if you do get a warning overnight. Then tomorrow morning, we're still seeing a couple of lines here and some supercells embedded within that. A tremendously strong low-level jet coming up and across this area. So again, it's not going to take a whole lot to get these storms rotating and or producing damaging wind. Some cells popping up in southwest parts of Alabama, middle of the morning tomorrow. Then we take it into the middle of the day. We see a little bit less structure here, but still some strong storms that are capable of producing wind damage. And, you know, because you've got, as I mentioned, just so much wind aloft, it doesn't take that much. You can have a pretty modest thunderstorm that comes through that maybe doesn't look like a whole lot on radar, but because there's so much wind in the atmosphere, it can tap into that and bring it down. So this threat is going to go on right through the afternoon. Then we go into the evening, and then finally we're beginning to run away from what instability there was. So we'll see less of a severe weather threat into Georgia as well as into South Carolina and North Carolina. It's really going to be centered on Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama tomorrow, maybe into parts of western Georgia as well. But after that, things do begin to settle down some. Let's talk about the tornado threat. We're looking at a 6 out of 10 on the Torcon in southern Mississippi and also in Louisiana, 5 out of 10 in central parts of Mississippi and also in Alabama, and then a 4 out of 10 in northern Mississippi and Alabama, as well as into the central Florida panhandle. So certainly we're looking at potential for tornadoes in these areas tomorrow. And this, by the way, is precisely where we would expect to see severe weather at this time of the year. The waters in the Gulf of Mexico still relatively warm. That's the source of energy. And then you've got this really dynamic system coming across, and all of that coming together tomorrow across the southeast. The other part of what we've been following tonight is a flooding threat, and we're going to talk more about that in a moment. First, though, we want to take you into Dallas. Storms rolling through the Big D earlier tonight, and the Weather Channel's Tevin Wooten was there with a look at the conditions.
Welcome into North Texas, where it's been a very volatile day for severe weather. We've had ripe conditions for tornadoes, severe thunderstorm warnings, and even the potential for colder temperatures on the backside of this system as well. So quite an interesting setup here when we consider the atmosphere and what it can do and what it has done for us on a Friday and pushing into Saturday here. This is a steady stream of rainfall, perhaps the steadiest rainfall and heaviest rainfall that we've seen throughout Dallas, Texas today. We also had a few tornado warnings throughout the area in Dallas County and Tarrant County near the DFW airport as well. I mean, look at the roadways right now. Soaked with rainfall here. This has been ongoing for about 30 or 40 minutes or so. There's also a game tonight, the Lakers versus the Mavericks, so a lot of people are rushing into the American Airlines Center as quickly as possible to dodge the downpours that we have here near Victory Park. So what can we expect after this line clears through? Cooler temperatures into our Saturday with temperatures close to 45 degrees for highs. The lowest temperatures of tomorrow expected to be right near freezing. That's the latest here from Dallas-Fort Worth. Let's send it back to you.
Thank you, Tevin. And Carl, we've been watching these storms tonight. So much rain with these.
It's incredible how much rain we have seen. We're talking about a significant flood threat because the area of heaviest rain is really not moving very much at all, Mark. And you're looking at probably the greatest flood threat into parts of Oklahoma and Arkansas and also into Missouri.
We've already seen some flooding tonight.
Yeah, yeah.
And with more rain in the same areas, it's going to take a while for this water to come down. Look at some of these new images that we're getting out of Texas. We've been maybe not as new anymore because we've been talking about this one, Carl. Just so much water on at that intersection. You can't see the street. You can't see the lines. And people are just plunging through. It doesn't seem to matter. Sedan, SUV, some sort of hybrid of the two there. Boxy car down the line.
I'm always shocked when I see this. I really am. You know, it's one thing if you're in a pickup truck and you've got a little more clearance. You know, you still shouldn't be doing it because you don't know exactly what's going on with the road below there. You've got fast flowing water, and if it gets up, you know, say another foot or so, it could be enough to float the car. But particularly in a car because, you know, you get just a little bit more depth there and you start getting some water into the intake and into the engine and your engine goes kaput and then suddenly you're in a jam. And, you know, what you don't always know is what the state of the flood is. Is it going to be stable? Is it going to be just what it is at the time? Or is the water rising and getting faster as time is going on?
Or the wake of the cars passing on the other side could sometimes be enough to kind of swamp your engine.
Yeah, raise the water level for a brief moment.
And be just enough to really put you in danger, not to mention the hassle of the insurance claims and the money loss and the time that it takes to fill out all those forms. Tonight, with the flood threat continuing, it's not worth doing, right? You won't know how deep it is. We said earlier you couldn't see the lines on the road. You got no chance when it's dark out. The flood threat potential goes from northeast Texas tonight all the way up through Missouri, into Illinois and Indiana, into southern Michigan. Remember, some of these areas are going to be changing over to freezing rain and then eventually snow, and yet you're going through a flood threat first. Part of that means that the DOT crews have no chance to put down material on the roads, whether it be sand or salt or some sort of brine, because the rain itself will wash it away. It's far too heavy a rain event before that changeover to frozen stuff in order to protect those roads for tomorrow. That's one more thing that you need to watch out for when that cold air comes in. Carl's going to talk about that upcoming winter side to our winter storm. Who knew? There's a winter side to our wintry conditions here. Likely flooding continuing eastern Oklahoma, western Arkansas into Missouri. That's this area where we've got all of that, you know, heavy rain and the green outlines. Look at this, though. The freezing rain, as seen by the radar, is not too far away now from some of our flash flood warnings. The leading edge is where we have all the severe thunderstorm warnings and the worst of the wind in Arkansas. I'm going to remove those just a bit so we can focus in on the flash flooding that we've been seeing. Starting off first near the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The severe threat done, but look how much rain has built back in around the Fort Worth area. This is really becoming a problem when you consider how much rain we've had. The 3-hour accumulation's now not that bad, right? About an inch or so. But you go to the 6-hour and then the 12-hour, and you can see just how much rain has fallen across this zone. Yellows and oranges indicating anywhere from 3 to 5 or even 5 to 8 inches of rain. That's why we've had these reports of flooding around the hospital, reports of flooding around I-35. Look at the Fort Smith area, just inundated with flash flood warnings. The heavy rain continues there. Now getting some new reports of flooding around Fort Smith. Fort Smith, a few cars stranded there due to high water. That's one of the reports. On the northeast side of that, several roads flooded throughout Van Buren County. Just south of Fort Smith in Pateo, several roads flooded. You get the idea. Things are going bad to worse. And we could also see that from Springfield up through Rolla along that I-44 corridor, Carl, where the heavy, heavy rain continues.
Yeah, and Mark, you know, this is really like, as we said earlier, this is more like a springtime storm.
Oh, yeah.
You've got the warm side, but you've got the cold side as well. We're looking at some snow and some freezing rain up into parts of the Midwest right now. You see the snow coming down in Iowa as well as into Wisconsin, and there has been freezing rain. It's winding down in Kansas City. Still seeing a little of it in northern Missouri right now. We actually are not seeing any reports. None of the stations actually reporting it right now. Cedar Rapids has changed over to snow, and then we're getting moderate freezing rain right now in Rockford. That's always a worry when you've got it coming down at a really good clip, because that's when you can see it accumulating on the trees and the roads a lot more quickly. So the areas where we expect to see 1/10 of an inch and more are going to be up through northern Missouri into Hannibal as well as Quincy towards the Quad Cities and over into Michigan. But in Michigan, that's where we think there's greater potential for 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation, and that's the level at which you start to see that risk for power lines coming down and tree limbs coming down. Snow's not going to be particularly heavy. It is going to last for a while, though. The timing's pretty good from Friday night into the weekend. A lot of you can just sit tight. Here you see tomorrow morning snow's coming down in Oklahoma City, coming up into Kansas City, and then we expect that second wave to move into Chicago, going through the afternoon and the evening, probably about 5 inches on the north side of the metro.
Oh, your mom just texted.
Don't miss all new episodes of Highway Through Hell, Sunday nights at 8, here on the Weather Channel.
It is a cold and rainy night here in northern Illinois. Temperatures in the mid-30s. We're about 45 miles as the crow flies from the lakefront in Chicago, northwest out here in McHenry County, not far from the Wisconsin line. And this rain eventually is going to change to some freezing rain and sleet before it goes over to snow on Saturday. The entire Chicagoland area will change to snow by later in the afternoon as temperatures fall to and below freezing, not only here but up in the clouds. And the worst weather by far, the combination of snow and blowing snow and those winds, which will gust upwards of 40 miles an hour, maybe even 50-mile-an-hour gusts on the lakefront tomorrow evening, will kick in, and the roads will go downhill very quickly after sundown Saturday evening. Big impacts, too, at O'Hare already late Friday night. 300 flights canceled. That's about 15% of the inventory in and out of O'Hare. Expect more cancellations. By the way, the storm pulls out of the way, and the snow is out of the way, and the skies are partly cloudy, about 30, back to average. It's been very warm in January. That's the high on Sunday. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel, the Weather Channel, McHenry, Illinois.
All right, Mike, thank you very much. And we actually have a couple of waves coming through across parts of the plains in the Midwest. One is moving through right now, and with that, we're getting some freezing rain and some snow into Missouri and Iowa, as well as up into Wisconsin. And let's take a look a little bit closer. We're not seeing anything in Kansas City right now, and it does appear to be winding down, but that's the end of wave one. Wave number two is going to fill that in into tomorrow. So we expect to see snow once again in Kansas City and right down through Oklahoma. Getting some freezing rain in Kirksville right now. We're back into the freezing rain in Ottumwa in southern Iowa. We've changed over to snow in Cedar Rapids. Getting some moderate freezing rain in Rockford right now. You can see how the rain itself, plain old rain, has really stepped up in Chicago. Boy, kind of a lousy night there. Temps in the 30s, and we've got some moderate rain now coming through. Actually, heavy rain right now coming through in Chicago, as well as Waukesha, and moderate rain into Milwaukee. So yeah, it is a lousy night in Chicagoland, and we're going to see just about everything going through the day tomorrow. So this is a look at the model forecast. And so again, you've got wave number 1 right there this evening. We're going to see a little bit of a cessation there, but then it fills back in going into tomorrow morning, and you see the gradient that is related to the temperature profile. So we go from freezing rain to sleet to snow there, and the snow filling in Oklahoma City early tomorrow morning, coming down in Wichita right up through the 35 corridor into Kansas City, and then up towards Green Bay as well. Now we'll take it through the day tomorrow. There could be some really substantial freezing rain in central parts of Michigan. So Lansing, maybe over towards Grand Rapids. We could be looking at 1/4 of an inch of ice accumulation or more. So it's not just going to be a problem on the roads. We actually could be talking about some issues with power going out in central Michigan. Here you see wave number 2 beginning to wrap up and coming up through that 44 corridor, Springfield, some of the very areas where we've had so much in the way of flooding problems. We'll be looking at snow tomorrow as all this comes through. Snow in Kansas City, moving up into eastern Iowa. And then finally we change over to snow in Chicago. It's going to be a little bit later of a changeover in southern parts of the Chicago metro. So less snow accumulation there, more snow accumulation on the north side of the metro, looking at possibly as much as 5 to 6 inches of snow there, and more substantial snows in Wisconsin as well as into much of northern Michigan. So certainly plenty of wintry weather to deal with, but at least the timing mark is pretty good, as a lot of people can stay home and not worry about it too much.
Yeah, watching a winter storm from your window with some hot chocolate sounds
better way to
good.
go.
Driving around in it, not so good.
Yeah.
So that's basically the difference between the wintry side of a storm, that if you're inside you're fine, and the severe side of the storm, which sometimes follows into your house in worst case scenarios. This is Hot Springs, Arkansas, where there are severe thunderstorm warnings that are in place. We've been watching a big Boeing segment coming across northern and central Arkansas into southern portions of Missouri. At the very northern side of that Boeing segment, we do have a tornado warning that is now just on the Missouri side. The Arkansas side has been allowed to expire, but if you are in Howell or Ozark counties near West Plains, then you are still under the tornado warning. Goes until 11 o'clock. This is issued by the Springfield office there in southwestern portions of Missouri. What they're looking at is this big Boeing segment part in the Arkansas area. That is straight line wind going this way. You got this kink in the line before another one of those surges heading towards West Plains. That change in direction is there because of the potential for a tornado. And so when we look at the velocity data, it's a little bit muddy here. We're a little bit far away from the radar site itself. And so we get all this red and green action right next to each other. Real tough to say if there's going to be a tornado, but just the presentation alone from the normal mode of the rainfall of the radar is enough to say, with this kind of sheared environment, that there could be a tornado within here at just about any point headed diagonally up towards the West Plains area. Little Rock, there's this line of storms, very gusty winds coming towards Conway, coming towards Hot Springs, and then coming down through Little Rock before too much longer. I also want to tell you about these storms in northeast Texas. If we put the lightning on quickly, we're now seeing lightning out ahead of the line. Those strong storms could start to organize soon.
Frequent heartburn?
Save at Trelegy.com.
All right, our continuing coverage is rolling on here with severe weather plunging through the center of the country. Meteorologist Mark Elliott here with you, as well as meteorologist Carl Parker. We're following that potential for more severe weather. This is a tornado watch that continues until 2 a.m. from Little Rock to Texarkana to Shreveport. We also have a tornado watch for Dallas, the eastern side of the Dallas area. It's been canceled for Dallas itself, and then down through Buffalo goes until 2 a.m. and a tornado watch over the Houston area that goes until 4 a.m. Even as storms are knocking on the doorstep for the far northwestern suburbs Now it'll take until 3 or 4 a.m. to get through Houston, through Galveston, and into the Gulf of Mexico. This whole line of storms is really electrified. We've seen all kinds of lightning action from St. Louis all the way down into the Gulf Coast of Texas, with kind of two big clusters of problems that we're watching. One of those is across Arkansas and southern Missouri. The other one is across eastern Texas at this point. I'm going to focus in here towards the southern side of Missouri, where there is still a tornado warning moving towards West Plains. It's Howell and Ozark counties, with a bit of a bend in the line right in here. That kink, that dog leg, indicates a shifting wind pattern where the winds out ahead of this line are bending in like this, and the rain-cooled air is then surging forward there. And so in between, you wind up with a natural counterclockwise circulation, which will then walk its way kind of up this line of storms. And so if you're in West Plains, please watch this carefully. Put yourself in the safest place possible now. The lowest level of the building, a sturdy building if you can, putting as many walls between you and the storm as possible. Basement or a shelter is the best option if your structure happens to have one of those. Again, there's very strong straight line winds on that south side of the storm, but a chance for rotation right in here, and that is the zone that we're going to be following towards the north, towards the West Plains area. That's why that tornado warning has been issued. But this whole area is tied to this large bowing segment, a couple of different bows now that are generally headed towards Little Rock. Conway and Faulkner, as well as Perry counties, under a severe thunderstorm warning. The Hot Springs area underneath has a tornado warning as well right now. Sorry, a severe thunderstorm warning right now for Garland, Montgomery, and Perry. We can continue to follow that line south for a severe thunderstorm warning for Clark, Hot Spring, and Pike. And again, all of this is headed generally towards the Little Rock area. Kind of zooming out and just looking at the lightning in this very area, which is, you know, it's a large area, but there is a lot of lightning to look at. This is the kind of electrified storm that's headed towards Little Rock, with 2,500 lightning strikes in the past 15 minutes. This is a very strong storm system. Lots of dynamics with this, lots of upward moving air to separate out those charges. And really, Carl, what comes up must come down. If you have those really strong updrafts, they can, you know, eventually collapse and turn into downdrafts and blow through. And then we know we have so much wind energy aloft that this rain is falling through, and that can be translated down to the surface also.
Yeah, the low-level jet is just going to be nuts overnight tonight, especially by tomorrow morning. We're going to be talking about winds that could be 100 miles per hour just off the ground at about 5,000 feet. There is a live look at Dallas. I believe that is the Reunion Tower right there, and we've been looking at lightning for, you know, a lot of the night tonight. It's just been ongoing, just kind of lingering there in the Metroplex, even as it's very intense just off to the east. And in fact, let's take a look at what's going on in southeast Texas right now. And you can see the line of storms. It's making its way towards the Houston area slowly but surely. There is a warning to tell you about near College Station and Huntsville. The storms just through College Station. That's Grimes, Madison, and Walker counties under warning for possible damaging wind. Moving pretty quickly here, about 60 miles per hour. And so we're looking at some damaging wind potential coming into that 45 corridor. And it's going to be moving right up into Huntsville before too long, into Midway at 10:40, into Huntsville at 10:58, and Trinity by 11:07. And look at the lightning just in this little area. That's 1,000 strikes from College Station up into Palestine there. Just a terrific amount of lightning. And then as we expand the picture even more, and we look through the central and northern part of the state, you see 3,300 strikes of lightning. Again, some of that lingering in the Dallas metro area, but not nearly as intense as it is from the Arklatex on southward into Corsicana and right down across that 45 corridor. There is, by the way, a tornado watch in effect going until 4 o'clock in the morning. We expect that the line of storms is going to be coming through the Houston metro here over the next couple of hours. So certainly heads up, as there could be some tornado warnings, and there will be a damaging wind threat and certainly quite a bit of lightning. So this is the forecast through tonight. Severe weather is very likely from northeast Texas, northern Louisiana into Arkansas and into western parts of Mississippi. We'll have much more on all of this on the other side of the break.
See how easy saving on homeowners and condo insurance can be.
A line of storms is moving through the state of Arkansas as well as through Texas and portions of Louisiana and portions of Missouri right now as well. This happens to be Texarkana, just onto the Arkansas side, crossing over the border from Texas. Look at the rain. I mean, my goodness, you can barely see through that camera to the road underneath. That's kind of what it's going to look like through your windshield right now as well. Real difficult travel across the affected areas where we have those that line of storms moving through. There is a severe thunderstorm potential here, but also a tornado threat that continues tonight along and just out ahead of that line of storms. The wind shift, the different wind directions with height is very notable tonight. Extreme levels of wind aloft and at a different wind direction than what we have right at the surface. That's why we have this tornado watch until 2 a.m. across Arkansas through Texarkana and Shreveport until midnight local time for this sliver of Texas right in here. But then if you go down towards coastal Texas, including Houston, that's where a tornado watch continues until 4. This whole area is connected by a line of storms with just gargantuan amount of lightning. That is going to be one of the take-home memorable moments from this storm system, is the high electrified nature of these storms. You could argue that there's a big surge in that lightning where we have the severe thunderstorm warnings in southern Missouri and northern into central Arkansas, but then also into now eastern Texas. And so if you're in Shreveport, it's headed your way. If you're in Houston, it's headed your way. If you're in Little Rock, it's still headed your way. Let's zoom in first on this area of northern Arkansas, southern Missouri. There's still a bit of a kink in the line here. They've allowed the tornado warnings to expire through West Point. Not completely out of the question that we could have a new tornado warning spin up here at just about any point. A quick look at some of the other counties impacted near West Plains. We've got Douglas and Howell out ahead of that as we kind of switch radar sites, so not as good a picture of the storms. There you go. Oregon and Shannon. We got a severe thunderstorm warning for you as well. Here's Poplar Bluff, if you're familiar with that area. These storms are due west from there, but they're going to take their sweet time to get to the Poplar Bluff area. And then we can slide into the kind of the Arkansas side of things, where Independence, Izard, and Sharp continue to have a pronounced bowing segment. Let's jump down to the Little Rock area, where just outside Conway, just outside Hot Springs, severe thunderstorm warnings are in place. These are right up against flash flood warnings because of the amount of rain that we've seen. A quick look at that. Over the past 3 hours, anywhere in yellow in here indicating over 3 inches of rain, and yet Little Rock has seen almost nothing. That line of storms is coming, Little Rock, and it's coming in a big way with all kinds of lightning action as well as the wind, and that's really why we're getting the severe thunderstorm warnings here. It is the wind potential that's moving towards the Little Rock area. And Carl, we know that we're going to have this threat continuing through Texas tonight and really further east through the rest of the overnight into Saturday. Yeah, you know, it's really important to have a way to be notified of severe weather overnight tonight, because we're going to be looking at really strong storms, most likely all night long. And as that threat lasts into the overnight hours, meteorologist Stephanie Abrams explains why nighttime tornadoes are so deadly and the steps you can take right now to prepare for the threat.
Who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name.
They are terrifying even in broad daylight. But when a tornado hits in the middle of the night, there's little time to think, let alone feel anything. Harrisburg, Illinois is a perfect example. A tornado struck in the early morning hours on February 29, 2012, killing 8.
Of course, we were sleeping, thinking, okay, we got to get up in the morning and go to work.
Alice Retzloff and her family survived thanks to her daughter. She had stayed up all night following the radar and warnings on TV.
She came in about 4:30 and said, okay, we got to get in the basement. It's headed for us.
Remaining vigilant overnight is the best way to stay safe. You can't rely on a tornado siren to jar you from sleep. Keep in mind, there is no national requirement for tornado sirens, and many areas don't have them. Being ready for this next severe system is critical, so go over your family's weather plan now. If you don't have a basement, be sure to seek shelter in a small, windowless first floor interior room like a closet or a bathroom. I'm meteorologist Stephanie Abrams, the Weather Channel.
All right, Stephanie, thank you very much. And we wanted to take a look at some of the parameters that we're following here to follow this severe weather. One of them is what we call CAPE, or instability. That's basically the fuel for the thunderstorms. And it's not off the charts, but it's more than sufficient to keep these storms going. You see the areas in yellow, that's where you've got the highest instability, and then it tapers off as you get through orange and red. And beyond that, beyond the point where you see any color, we really don't have much instability at all. But you can see where it is. It's solidly in place across Louisiana and climbing northward into Arkansas as well as into Mississippi, and that's going to continue to be the case. Now, the other part of what is driving this severe weather threat is the wind shear in the atmosphere, and we're seeing a terrific turning of the winds, but also just a remarkable increase in wind speed as you go from the surface up to 5,000 feet. So these are the surface winds in orange. You see the orange coloring right in there, right in there. Those are the surface winds. They're coming out of the south-southeast. But then in the blue coloring, those are the winds at 5,000 feet. Now, I've cut this off at 50 miles an hour plus. 50 miles per hour plus is what we're seeing in blue, but it's getting up to 60 to 70 miles per hour in spots. So there's a tremendous change in wind speed from the surface all the way up. And what that does is it creates spin in the atmosphere, which can then be acquired by these storms, which is why we're going to see this ongoing tornado threat. We've got the low-level jet on here with the future radar, and we watch these storms coming into Shreveport and Little Rock into late tonight. Overnight tonight, we expect they're going to move over into the Mississippi Valley and towards Memphis, Tennessee. So again, you've got to be on your toes all night long tonight, as we could be talking about tornadoes and straight line wind damage.
Timeless News Network, the Weather Channel.
Welcome back, everybody, as we are watching some video from earlier today in Fairplay, Missouri. I'm meteorologist Mark Elliott here with meteorologist Carl Parker. And Carl, it's a little bit rainy out. It's tough to see if this is just a low cloud and a rain curtain moving through, but there seems to be some circulation there moving right to left across your screen.
Yeah.
Maybe no damage from that. It's not much to hit, which is great news, but probably a tornado. Probably clearest right there.
This, really vividly illustrates the difficulty in getting eyes on a tornado in some cases. And I think a lot of people are inclined to do that. If there's a tornado warning for their area, their inclination might be to peek outside and see if they see anything before they actually start to take shelter. But a lot of times you can't really see a tornado. If you've got a tornado that is rain-wrapped, and this one is very clearly rain-wrapped, if you've got low cloud bases and not a lot of contrast, and a lot of things can make that happen. You tend to get a lot of contrast in the high plains where there's some drier air. You tend to have higher cloud bases, really well-defined funnels, so it's easy to see what's coming. But in cases like this where there's a lot of moisture in the atmosphere, everything's kind of hazy, it's really hard to tell. And a tornado can be on you before you realize it, and that's when it gets very dangerous. That's a big part of why the South in particular has a higher vulnerability to tornadoes, because so many of them look exactly like that.
Yeah, lots of studies about the Dixie Alley and why it is so dangerous when it comes to tornadoes. That's a good example. How about the storms here? Oh. We'll see near Dallas, but it's really over Dallas. Wow, what a view here.
Oh,
the lightning going, the anvil there shooting out to the left side of the screen.
In a case like that, I would have my face pressed to the window the entire time.
That is stunning.
That is amazing.
So like what you can see there, you can see where the updraft is. You can see through kind of the tallest part. There's a little bit of an overshooting top right in the center of your screen.
Yeah.
You can see the anvil where the rising air stops, where it meets its buoyancy level.
The equilibrium level.
Yep. And then it spreads out from there because it can't continue to rise. It's cooled down to the same level as the environment. And you can see the real turbulent air ahead of that giant cloud, where you've got all the kind of bubbling, and then of course you got the separate charges in that rising air in the thunderstorm itself.
Yeah, and you can see a little bit of an angle there on the left side. You can see how it almost looks like a little bit of a staircase there, and that's that tilted updraft, which is precisely what you'd expect to see in a high shear environment. You'd expect to see the thunderstorm sort of leaning over, and that allows the storm to last a lot longer as rain falls outside of the updraft.
And now we have a live view for you in the Dallas area. Temps have cooled, not to the point where they're going to stop cooling by any stretch. We're in the low 50s. There's a raindrop hitting the lens there. There's still a good bit of lightning around the area, but it's not nearly as prevalent as it was earlier when you were under watches and warnings with the storms coming through. Now it's better, but it's not the total risk isn't necessarily done.
And you know what's on the way in Dallas tomorrow? Possibly a little bit of snow.
Yeah.
To end this whole thing.
That's what I said. Not where the temperature will stop dropping.
Yeah.
And then Texarkana. This is right over the Texas border onto the Arkansas side. This is where we do have almost constant lightning. There was one of those flashes. You see cars driving by with their flashers on because it's just impossible to see. People probably going too fast for the conditions, to tell you the truth, because it is pouring out there right now.
I love that lightning that lights up the entire landscape, where for a moment it looks like it's daylight. That's really cool.
Yeah, cool from watching it from here, watching it from inside a building where you're far enough away from the windows. But still a lot of danger out there tonight. Let's look at the kind of the wide view of the radar picture now with the lightning on. So you can see where those two areas that we just showed you live. We've got Dallas with some lightning strikes still continuing, still with some reasonably heavy rain kind of bending back. That's going to be our next area of low pressure that's forming, and will then kind of travel along this way and refill in the snow. Oklahoma City to Kansas City, you're in a lull right now, but this low is just getting more organized over the Dallas area. That's what's giving you the lightning strikes behind the main line. Then this is generally where Texarkana is. You wouldn't be able to see it because of all the lightning strikes. It is just wild there right now with regards to the amount of lightning that we see. Let's zoom in to a couple of the big cities. We'll leave the lightning on so you can get an idea of what's happening. Here's the Little Rock area with severe thunderstorm warnings almost all the way to Little Rock, but now we're also seeing some lightning strikes in town, a big surge to the lightning in some of the cells that are out ahead. As these collide together, there could be some cell mergers that sometimes gives just enough kick to the line that's approaching to start some rotation. So when that happens, there could be brief spin-up tornadoes. That's the Little Rock area. We can slide down to Texarkana. Here's Texarkana and the flooding that's happening on the west side of town. All kinds of rain and lightning in Texarkana. We can jump down to College Station or so here in Texas, where, my goodness, you can't even see the town names. So College Station is right in here. Storms came through. Now they're moving towards Huntsville along I-45, and that means Houston, you're next. In the Houston area, seeing some light drizzle, but back towards Katy and west from there, the line of storms continues to move in. Heavy rain and constant lightning tonight.
Meet the smoothest taste on earth.
Welcome back, everyone. Some new video into us here at the Weather Channel. Just to prove to you that Isaiah does indeed have a wintry side. This was Des Moines. Whew, that makes me cold just listening to the wind and seeing those snowflakes go by. Goodness gracious, when people, you know, half a state away are seeing flooding, severe thunderstorm warnings, flash flood warnings, and yet in Des Moines, this is the scene, scraping off windows, trying to clear off roads. This is a extraordinarily dynamic storm system with a pronounced cold side and the flow of tropical moisture coming into play on the warm side. What a difference on either side of this storm. The snow going sideways there because of the wind. Then we got ice, but for a different reason. This is Gatesville, Texas. That's all hail. That's not sleet. That is hail. We got big thunderstorms moving across Texas tonight. Heavy rain. Most of the warnings that we saw were either because of tornadoes or because of winds, straight line wind damage. We were not seeing hail that was large enough to get warned on overall. This certainly is not. It looks like pea to maybe nickel size mixed in. That's not large enough to get you a severe thunderstorm warning. Got to get to about an inch in diameter, quarter size or greater, before you'll get a severe thunderstorm warning because of hail. That said, you certainly won't get a severe thunderstorm warning because of heavy rain and lightning. In Texarkana, you're getting both of those. So much rain that you can barely see out of this DOT camera, and lightning that, fairly regularly blows up the iris of the camera, just fills the sky with that white-blue color. There's a lot of lightning. There's another example, lightning bolt going by. Lots of lightning across this area tonight. A very dangerous storm in that regard. Remember, every lightning strike is severe. St. Louis is on the warm side of the storm for now. You're seeing steady rain with on the south side of the area. We've got some lightning strikes moving up towards you. Not as much in the way of lightning in St. Louis, but remember you had one big burst of rain come through already, and earlier this evening you had some flash flood warnings. At the moment, you don't have all that much in the way of flash flood warnings in St. Louis. Carl, we do have some severe weather breaking out in Texas, including a new tornado warning way outside of Houston.
Yeah, that's right. Into northwestern parts of Harris County, looking at a tornado warning right now, and this is now moving pretty rapidly off to the east at about 50 miles per hour. So that is Harris, Montgomery, and Waller counties under warning right now until 11:30. As we zoom in, the area that we're concerned about is now just east of Waller. It's right about in there. That little bit of a red and green interface there is where we're seeing some rotation, where the raindrops are moving in different directions in a relatively small space. And so possible tornado coming towards Magnolia at about 11:10, Pinehurst at 11:13, and Honia at about 11:24 or so. Looks like a brand new scan. Let's take a look at that. And still seeing evidence of rotation right in this area. It's kind of a messy return, but we are still certainly seeing some rotation there. So heads up on that. A possible tornado coming your way as that rapidly again moves off to the northeast, about 50 miles per hour. To the north of that, looking at warning for Grimes and Montgomery and Waller counties right in there, and then also warning up just west of Longview. That is for Cherokee and Smith counties, and we're looking at damaging wind potential with those storms as they move off to the east. And boy, just a terrific amount of lightning here. Look at that, from Tyler all the way down into the I-10 corridor just outside of Houston. Nearly 2,000 strikes in the last 15 minutes. A highly electrical complex coming through. That's been the case all up and down this line of storms, well up into Missouri there in Arkansas as well. Tornado watch is going until 4 o'clock in the morning in Houston, and the model guidance showing that line of storms coming through over the next couple of hours. Because there is so much wind in the low levels of the atmosphere, that low level shear as we call it, there's going to be potential for tornadoes right through the overnight hours. Even though there's not a huge amount of instability, there's certainly enough to support these strong storms, and as they build up into the atmosphere where you've got all that wind shear, they can begin to acquire that spin, and that's how we get rotating storms and eventually tornadoes. So we really want you to be on your toes here in Houston through the night tonight, and we're going to watch the storms getting even farther east into tomorrow. That severe threat going well into the day tomorrow in Louisiana, Mississippi, and also in Alabama. And we'll have more on that coming up in just a few minutes. Let's see what's happening farther north now, and it's also been a really busy night in Arkansas, Mark.
Yeah, no kidding. You mentioned the lightning strikes getting towards that kind of 2,000 number across the I-20 corridor and point south. Well, we can take that cutoff again, kind of near I-20 northeast Texas, and move the count up through Arkansas into southern Missouri. Look at the amount of lightning strikes here. About 3,000 in the past 15 minutes, a highly electrified storm system. So from southern Missouri all the way down to the Gulf Coast, we've got basically constant lightning strikes at this point. Let's zoom in now towards northern Arkansas, southern Missouri. Severe thunderstorm warnings continue here because of these kind of bowing features that we're seeing. Very strong signatures for wind in Oregon and Shannon counties. Severe thunderstorm warnings continue until 11:45 there. Independence, Izard, and Sharp, severe thunderstorm warnings. Let's follow these down towards the Little Rock area. So Conway, my goodness, very strong wind is knocking on the doorstep for the Conway area. Look at this surge forward for the rainfall because of the rain-cooled air pushing that forward. That apex of the bow is pointed right at Conway, so very strong winds possible here. Let's see if we can get a look at that. We're reasonably close to the radar there, so let's get a little bit closer in, and we're not too high off the deck there. If we click that blue color that we're seeing, that is about 60-mile-per-hour winds right in there. So some very strong winds are coming towards the Conway area. Then we can also bend our way towards Little Rock itself. Here's Little Rock on the center of your screen. The radar site is that black circle that you see. This line of storms is coming your way, and you're also seeing some storms right over top of Little Rock out ahead of the line. As those kind of collide together, as we loop this forward, you can see that these storms are going this way. The line of storms is coming this way. Sometimes when you get those two crash together, that cell merger, you start some extra circulation, and you can wind up with the chance for some brief spin-up tornadoes on that leading edge. No tornado warnings at the moment, but it's certainly not out of the question that we could have some of those. The other thing to note is that as that line is approaching, we are getting new flash flood warnings that are being issued. It's a relatively slow motion off to the east, and it's a lot of very heavy rainfall. Move this into the paved over area of Little Rock, and I think we're going to have a problem sooner rather than later with regards to flooding in the Little Rock area. It would not surprise me at all if within the next half an hour to an hour we have both severe thunderstorm warnings and flash flood warnings ongoing in the Little Rock proper, right in Little Rock itself. If we look at the amount of rain that's fallen here in the past 3 hours, you're starting to get into those dark greens, a little bit of yellow. That's 2 to 3, maybe even 3 to 5 inches of rain. If we extend that time out a bit to show you what's happened today, 6 and then 12 hours, the Little Rock area really hasn't seen all that much yet. So there might be some bandwidth there, although pavement doesn't soak up much rain. You go back to the west, though, and you can really feel these lines, these training lines, where they've set up today with regards to the very heavy rainfall potential. And so now with more rain coming in that way, it could be quite dangerous and quite damaging. Following further south, Garland, Hot Springs, and Saline underneath that severe thunderstorm warning, as is Clark, Dallas, and Hot Springs. So that's the Arkansas side of things. It's important to also look back towards Dallas because that is the where the new area of low pressure is starting to develop. You see how we've got a little bit of a spin in here, kind of a broad spin. That's behind the line of storms. That's our next wave of low pressure that's then going to go into the colder air and give you that chance for more wintry weather. So this is the next feature that's going to come up through our, our frontal system. This next area of low pressure right in here is going to be what fills back in this zone with more snow. Carl, tomorrow we're going to, and really through the rest of tonight, we're going to be watching that line of storms moving east, moving into very strong winds aloft, and we've got the rest of the wintry side to go. tomorrow, too. This is a crazy storm.
A lot going on. It feels very much like a spring storm, and you talked about those low-level winds. They are just crazy right now. I want to show you what's going on right now into parts of Arkansas. This is Norman, Arkansas, and the rain has been relentless here in some areas, really coming down. You can get a sense of that. You see the spray being kicked up, quite a bit of lightning. Wow, look at that. Thousands and thousands of strikes now across the state with this big complex as it comes through. It has been nearly constant lightning in some areas, and that too certainly a threat, not as much as it used to be, as we don't have as much in the way of metal plumbing anymore, and most people don't use corded devices anymore, though some still do in some cases. But certainly it's just a good night to remain inside with all of that lighting. Just a tremendous light show now ongoing here across parts of Arkansas. Also want to show you Texarkana, and we see something very similar. We've been watching this camera for a while, and just looks like daylight for a brief moment there with all of these flashes that are coming through and traffic moving along relatively slowly with the rain coming down at a really good clip. Now, I want to take you well to the north and show you what's going on up into Missouri, and we're looking at this velocity data. This is the same thing that we look at when we look inside tornadoes. This gives us a sense of the motion of the atmosphere and the rain. And what we see here is this low-level jet. We're looking at winds that are coming out of the south. This is an inbound wind, that blue color right there. So winds that are coming out of the south and towards the radar, and a velocity of 81 miles per hour off the ground. That is tremendous wind in the low levels of the atmosphere. That is that low-level jet that we've been talking about. And so this is a radar depiction, a future radar, modeled radar, along with that low-level jet, which is going to be up to 80 to 90 to 100 miles per hour going into tomorrow morning. And when your winds are that strong in the low levels of the atmosphere, what that does is it creates a lot of shear, so you can get tornadoes, and it also can feed into the storms and create a straight line damaging wind threat. So those two threats are going to loom large through the night tonight and into tomorrow. So here we go. We'll take this forward into 2 o'clock in the morning. Strong storms in eastern Arkansas at that time. Also coming up and across northwestern Louisiana, probably through Houston by that time. 5 o'clock in the morning. Notice how the model is depicting some individual, or as we call them, discrete cells in parts of Tennessee there, as well as into northwest Mississippi. So because you've got so much wind shear, we could very well be looking at some rotating storms even tomorrow morning. You don't think of the morning as being the time when you have to really worry about tornadoes, but it's entirely possible that we'll be looking at some tornado warnings tomorrow morning in these areas because that low-level jet is so strong. That's why we've got this big threat tomorrow. Tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., we still see discrete cells here, embedded cells in the line coming into Jackson, starting to approach New Orleans, coming through New Orleans in the middle of the morning. Some individual cells popping up in southwestern parts of Alabama, going here in eastern parts of Mississippi. And then finally, as we go into the latter part of the day, all this weather is beginning to run away from the greatest instability. So we're starting to cut off the fuel a little bit to these storms. There's going to be some. It's going to be enough for them to go. And they don't have to be that strong. They don't have to be that tall because there's so much wind. They could still produce wind, but it's not going to be quite the same level of threat as it gets over a little farther east. However, there could be tornado warnings in the Atlanta metro. There could be some severe thunderstorm warnings, certainly in the Atlanta metro, and then those storms continue farther east beyond that. But the greater threat will be in Louisiana and Mississippi and also in Alabama tomorrow. In those areas in particular, please be on your toes because it could be a really busy day, one of the busiest that we have seen in quite some time. Now, another part of what we've been watching is the flood threat, and that is ongoing, just getting hammered in some areas tonight, Mark.
Yeah, some areas that are overlapping severe thunderstorm warnings with flash flood warnings, leaving scenes like this, putting everybody in danger when you drive your car right on through a flooded intersection. I guess people just don't understand how little water it takes to really put you into trouble.
Yeah, well, you know, and the thing that I've been asking this question for a while now, you know, the insurance industry in general is under more strain every year because we're seeing more disasters, we're seeing heavier rain, we're seeing, you know, very strong hurricanes, we're seeing wildfires, that kind of thing. So, you know, as they're having a harder time remaining solvent, are they going to ask harder and harder questions of people who do things like this and lose their cars?
Yeah. But then, I mean, the other part of the story, we're only seeing one intersection. What if they were coming out of an area that had even more water? You know, what if you're just unfortunate, unlucky, and you're driving and this comes into basically where you're at? It's not always as easy as just don't be on the road. Sometimes you just have to get somewhere, and this is what happens. So I get it. Just be careful, especially tonight. Especially when you can't see how deep that water is, with a flood threat that stretches from northeast Texas all the way to the Great Lakes and beyond, a likelihood of flash flooding through the night. And we've already seen it beginning across this area. Look, those are all flash flood warnings. They're overlapping these severe thunderstorm warnings, and you notice that forward progress of the heavy rain is barely budging. And so, where you see flooding now, you're going to continue to have that risk through the rest of the night. We're not done with the flash flood story yet.
You haven't seen this.
Don't miss all new episodes of Highway Through Hell, Sunday nights at 8, here on the Weather Channel.
Well, the line of storms continues to move through Arkansas. This is right along the I-30 corridor, and there's a lot of lightning. I don't know if you've heard us say that yet tonight, but there's a lot of lightning. A very highly electrified storm. It just illuminates the entire picture there, goes white to blue and back to the middle of the night. The lightning strikes are a big part of the story tonight across Arkansas. We're really filling in the state. Wow, I mean, just strike after strike after strike here. It's almost constant. You know, imagine being there, hearing the rumbles of thunder, and before one thunder, roll can end, the next one is starting. It is a noisy night across Arkansas and a very dangerous drive with water kind of fishtailing off the car tires there because of the standing puddles on the roadways and more heavy rain still falling. We are also following not just this area. We can go down towards the Texas border, Texarkana. I mean, the wavy nature of this camera is because of the amount of water going over the lens. We're watching this almost as if we're in a fishbowl. We're looking at the wavy pattern of the light going through to the lens of the camera because there's it has to travel through the water, through the raindrops on the lens first. It is pouring in this area, also very frequent lightning strikes. Want to get into the radar now because in the Little Rock area, which you're looking at here, a line of storms is approaching due west of West Little Rock by, 13 miles or so. We have a new tornado warning to tell you about. This tornado warning continues to make its way to the north and east, close to 40 miles per hour. So the line of storms, maybe they have already dropped it? It's no longer on my radar picture. Yeah, they canceled that almost as fast as it came up, but they got rid of it. But within here, very strong straight line winds are still there, and that is the problem with these types of tornado warnings. They're there for a scan or two, and almost as fast as you warn on them, the conditions change and the tornado warnings drop off. That said, this whole Boeing segment is pointed at Little Rock, and we are going to see very strong straight line winds. We've already seen them come through Conway and Hot Springs with very, very heavy rainfall as well. And then here's Little Rock. Little Rock and the radar site has seen some showers now, nothing compared to what's still on the way. Let's take a look at these storms in a bit of a 3D nature. We'll turn the view for you and then allow the camera to kind of tilt in towards the storms. So if you are in Little Rock, right in here, we'll zoom in on Little Rock. We've got a few storms that are now on the north side of town, right through here, and then a wall of storms that are approaching you from the west and marching their way steadily in. Almost an ominous sight when you see it in this form, with that wall of water headed your way. Again, here's a look at that Boeing segment that's coming towards Little Rock itself. But as we zoom out here, this is connected to storms that go all the way up into southern portions of Missouri, follow their way down through northern Arkansas, bend their way towards the Little Rock area, go through Hot Springs to Arkadelphia, where there's still severe thunderstorm warnings here, and then all the way down through the Texarkana area, which is that camera that we showed you. We also have seen storms kind of in northeast Texas through Tyler. Cherokee and Smith continues to have a severe thunderstorm warning. Shreveport was one of those cities that we were highlighting all week with one of the high potentials. A very likely was listed on our graphics for severe weather. The most likely outcome for that is going to be straight line winds from this line of storms that eventually bows its way into the Shreveport area. But we also can't rule out spin-up tornadoes along this line of storms as it continues to move in your direction. So very difficult travel today along I-20, I-49. It was really bad on I-35, and I think there still will be some problems on 35 because there's more rain and lightning in this area where our next area of low pressure is developing. And Carl, this next low is really the one that's going to give all the wintry weather for tomorrow.
Right, we've got another wave on the way. We've had plenty of it already, and we want to show you some freezing rain in Kansas City earlier today. And, you know, it can actually be really pretty. But of course, when it gets to be too heavy, when there's too much of an accumulation, it starts to really weigh down the trees and the power lines. That is going to be a worry, particularly in central parts of Michigan. Right now, we're getting some freezing rain into parts of Missouri, into Kirksville. They've been seeing freezing rain for quite some time now. Also up into some areas of Iowa and northern Illinois. There you see showing up in the pink shade right there. Heavy rain off to the east of that. Just a little bit of freezing rain around the Quad Cities right now. And then in Chicago, it is heavy rain and 37 degrees. You know, when you think about the types of weather that are the most uncomfortable personally, well, I think, you know, exceptionally cold, exceptionally windy weather is at the top of the list, but not very far down that list is got to be 37 with heavy rain. I mean, that is really, really unpleasant, and that's what we're going to be dealing with through tonight in Chicago, but eventually it's going to change over to a little bit of sleet and freezing rain and then plain old snow into tomorrow. So this is how that's all going to shake out. Snow on the way for Oklahoma City, as well as Wichita and Kansas City tomorrow. And then we change over to snow through the day tomorrow in Chicago, probably about 5 to 6 inches on the north side of the metro and not much on the south side.
Do you have
Keep the change.
Feed a family of 4 for about $3 per person with the $5.99 mix and match deal at Domino's.
Some new video here, hotel in Irving, Texas, with the walls that look like they were just sheared right off, and all the debris from that event lying here in the parking lot. Oof, there must have been some serious wind to do something like this, Carl.
Well, and there was a tornado warning, so, you know, the question is, was that, you know, related to that? I don't know. Was that in the same spot? I'm not sure.
Hard to know, but, you know, the National Weather Service teams come through and they look to see if, well, maybe was there some sort of construction issue in that spot? Could this have just been straight line winds that somehow tore something off the side of the building? Or was this rotating wind and a tornado that came through and did this very thing? It's certainly a mess because it was pouring and still is raining in the area. And then you have a gaping hole in the building. So there's some, you know, there's some big cleanup after something like this, no matter what started it in the first place. And then when you have some strong winds come through, these high-profile vehicles with that so much surface area pointed in the wrong direction with some of those winds, and you got to get the big trucks out, the big machinery to tilt those cars back up. And those high-profile vehicles, especially if there's not a lot of load, not a lot of stuff in the back, are reasonably easy to turn over.
You know, the most amazing video I ever saw, and you probably remember this, was there was a tornado, and I think it was also in the Dallas area, and it actually lifted up some of these trailers and into the sky.
Yeah.
And you think, well, how could that be? It seems impossible, but you just described it. You've got so much surface area relative to the weight if there's nothing in the back that it can, actually become, sent aloft by strong enough wind.
And so, this one, it's off the road a bit. Doesn't look like it was necessarily picked up and thrown any, huge distance. But that's a little consolation if you are that truck's owner. Hopefully everyone is okay after that event earlier today. Here's Dallas now. Still rainy. We're not done yet. The area of low pressure that's eventually going to give us a whole bunch more wintry weather has now moved through the Dallas area. So that's why you've had some kind of lingering rain and lingering lightning across the Dallas area. We're not quite done in Dallas, although we're almost done. How about Texarkana? Can't say the same for you. It is pouring in Texarkana. This is just over the Texas border into the Arkansas side. And this camera's looked like this for the past, 2 to 3 hours, and probably will still look like this for the next 2 hours. Very heavy rain, some substantial totals here when all is said and done. It's a little bit surprising to see as much car and truck traffic as we are seeing, although a lot of them are driving down with their flashers on to try to, I guess that tries to increase their visibility a bit. It depends on what state you're in, whether you need that, if you're supposed to have your flashers on or not when you're driving with heavy rain.
I've heard you're actually not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Here, is that right, in Georgia?
Correct.
You're not supposed to. But everyone does it.
Yes.
I mean, constantly. It's almost like a routine thing.
Yeah.
When there's heavy rain.
And because, it's a transplant state in a lot of ways, and if you move from a state where that's the law, it's hard to break your pattern.
That's true.
From doing that. Again, it is one of those local jurisdiction things, whether you're supposed to have your flashers on while you're driving. Part of the reason for it is that you think people can get a better sense of where you are and how fast you're going with your lights there, cutting through the rain. The version against it is that if your flashers are on, sometimes that means you're off to the side of the road or not moving, and it can trick the cars to think that's still the roadway and then have them plow into you if everyone has their flashers on, but you're actually a stopped car. We digress. In any case, here's the very heavy rainfall and the lightning that is still ongoing. Remember, we mentioned Texarkana. That's right in there. Goodness gracious, you can't even see the state of Arkansas within there because there's been so much heavy rain. Of course, within that is the Little Rock area. Here's Little Rock itself, and the line of storms is technically not even there yet. Let me turn off the warnings for you for just a second because we've got, this is actually outflow that is from these storms. That is there's so much moisture and there's so much availability to kind of make the air rise up that's now turning into a line of thunderstorms separate from the original line. Will that protect Little Rock from some of the worst of the wind? Maybe. Now you're surrounded. You got two different thunderstorm areas. But what we can do is loop this and show you just how little movement there is going to be once that rain arrives in Little Rock. I think this is going to be a problem for flooding in the paved over areas of downtown Little Rock because you're talking about extremely heavy rain for several hours in a row. Again, everyone within here has some sort of severe thunderstorm warning. We've got those around Conway until midnight, just outside Little Rock and to the south until midnight. And then here's Texarkana with very heavy rain and flooding as well.
Is right for you. Covered by Medicare and most major insurers.
Welcome back. We are following severe weather over a very large area, excuse me, this evening. And right now, some strong storms coming into the Houston metro area, and we're looking at a severe potential on the north side of the metro. Right now, there is not a warning for Houston proper, but certainly as you get up into northern parts of Harris County into Montgomery County, that's where we could be looking at some damaging wind. There's an awful lot of lightning moving in with these storms as well. So right now, there is a warning in effect for Montgomery and San Jacinto and Walker counties, that going until midnight tonight. Heavy rain now and strong winds coming into Conroe and right across that I-45 corridor near Bush Intercontinental and moving towards 59 as well. As we look at the leading edge of this area here and track that forward, that's going to be coming into Spring in just the next few minutes. Aldine about 11:46, Humble at 11:52, and Splendora at about 11:51. So heads up for some possible damaging wind. Now, you see the rain is not very far away from the Houston metro. It's now coming right down the Katy Freeway, and some pretty heavy rain here, as a matter of fact. We query some of this now just west of Sugar Land. That's a precip rate of 3 inches per hour, so it's really coming down in some spots. Would not be at all surprising to see some brief flooding on some of the feeder roads here as that moves down and into the metro. Again, as I say, no warning for Houston, the city of Houston, but certainly just outside of the area, we do have a warning. And we've got a threat for tornadoes because there is a lot of wind in the atmosphere. We call it low-level wind shear, and that is generally supportive of tornadoes. So there is a tornado watch in effect going until 4 o'clock in the morning. This line is probably going to be coming through over the next couple of hours, and so by the time you get to about 2 o'clock in the morning, the line will have cleared Houston, but still coming through other parts of southeast Texas, Galveston County, Chambers County, across the Ship Channel there, and then up farther northeast as well as you get up into the Piney Woods. So heads up for that potential for certainly some tornadoes and damaging wind through the night tonight, and a lot of lightning and some heavy rain. Also looking at severe thunderstorm warnings in the northeast part of the state, Cherokee and Smith County under warning. That's near Tyler. And then to the east of that, Cherokee, Rusk, and Smith counties under warning going until 12:30. And we have been looking at a crazy amount of lightning. Look at that. That is just unbelievable. I'm going to query this area here, and we'll see how much lightning that is from Huntsville up through Texarkana, nearly to Little Rock. And that is nearly 5,000 strikes here in the last 15 minutes coming through these areas in a crazy and unbelievable electrical storm now beginning to approach Shreveport, not very far away. Probably the next half hour or so gets into the west side of Shreveport and continues across the metro. That is just an unbelievable, that's the most lightning that we've seen all night, Mark.
Yeah, definitely a jump there, which shows us that the dynamics of the storm are not slowing down.
Not really
even
changing.
Though it's nighttime,
Yeah.
and if anything, with that new area of low pressure forming, there's even a little bit more lift.
Yeah.
Supporting those lightning strikes. Let's take a look at a couple of the areas that are dealing with that very thing. This is the Homan area along I-30 in Arkansas. Goodness gracious. There's so much water. Those are two trucks going by, and the headlights kind of mess with the camera, and then you go back into darkness until there's another lightning strike, and then suddenly the screen turns blue and white and all crazy just like that. Night to day, and then back again with these lightning strikes. So that's what you're driving through if you're in the Homan area, strike after strike after strike. We can also take a look at Texarkana. Texarkana might be the poster child tonight of the lightning and the rain. It feels like you're looking through this at a highway through a fishbowl because of the amount of water on the lens. And then you've got all these lightning strikes as well. You're right underneath one of those big just conglomerates of lightning that Carl was showing us that you can't even see the ground if we put the lightning detector on because of the amount of lightning that is occurring. Again, he mentioned 5,000 strikes between Little Rock and central Texas in just 15 minutes. Here's Little Rock, what we can show you of it, because it is now into Little Rock and it is pouring. I think this is the area I might be becoming the most concerned about with regards to flash flooding. Two different lines of storms kind of smushing together around Little Rock itself and not really moving much now that it has arrived. So we're going to see some very heavy rain. And so with that rain potential, flash flooding is a big concern. Here's Little Rock, of course. Memphis included in a flash flood watch, as is Paducah. That line of storms is approaching the Paducah area, St. Louis. And then flood watches up towards the Great Lakes, even off Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, where we're normally talking about lake effect snow. We're going to be talking about the chance for flooding. A likelihood of flooding through the rest of the night from Dallas to Fort Smith to Springfield. Dallas, your risk is about done. There's just some light rain remaining around near our developing new area of low pressure, but these are all active flood alerts of some kind. It's just a wild situation. Earlier today around Dallas-Fort Worth, we had these reports come out. This was flooding near the hospital, some roads closed near I-35. Here's what's going on near Fort Smith. Flash flood warnings there. We can drag this over a bit and head a little bit closer to Little Rock. And as you can see, the flash flood warnings over Garland, Perry, and Saline. Those are areas that have severe thunderstorm warnings still. And yet they have the flash flood warnings as well. Fort Smith, just off the screen, some new reports of flash flooding. We've also seen a lot of reports of flash flooding around Springfield. Look at all these reports that have come through. Some small hail in Springfield, Missouri, and then all of these are different flood reports that have come through. Roads closed, cars stranded, all kinds of stuff. I-44 to I-49. A very difficult travel setup, and now more heavy rain coming towards St. Louis with flood warnings near there as well.
I'm Leah.
We are America's most trusted TV news network, the Weather Channel.
Welcome back. We are following severe weather, and there is a brand new tornado warning in the Houston metro area to tell you about right now. That is for Harris and Fort Bend counties. Let's drop on in and show you what's going on with that. And we're watching a cell that is now along the 90 corridor near Rosenberg and coming up towards 59 Southwest Freeway. Fort Bend, Harris counties, as I mentioned, under warning until 12:15. And let's look at the velocity data. And so we've got a little bit of a kink showing up. Here's your inflow notch right in there, and right in there you got air that's coming around the other way, so you've got a little bit of a circulation right near Sugar Land. Let's circle this area and let's see if there's any evidence of debris at this time. And not seeing any evidence of debris. That is not the most profound circulation I've ever seen, but certainly there is one there. And if we track that forward, that is going to be coming up and across the Southwest Freeway. So moving into Meadows Place more immediately, then towards Janetta, and then Bel Air at about midnight, and then Foster Place at around 12:07. Again, I'm not seeing a really profound circulation at this time. There's more of a kink here right now, but we'll continue to watch this very closely as it may tighten up at any time, and we could be looking at something more serious here. From time to time that will happen. You'll see a little bit of a shift in the radar presentation. It won't look as good in one scan, and then it will look a little bit more well put together in another scan. So we'll continue to keep a close eye on that. Farther to the north, got a severe thunderstorm warning in effect here right across the 45 corridor. That's for parts of Harris County as well as Montgomery County, and these cells moving towards the 59 corridor right now. So looking at a damaging wind threat, now moving up into Cleveland as well as Humble and Ollie and Eastgate. That moving east about 50 miles per hour, and we are seeing an incredible amount of lightning right now across southeast Texas and right up into the Piney Woods. That is 5,200 strikes also into southwestern Arkansas. You're seeing it in real time now, all those strikes popping up. I mean, can you imagine what that would look like from a plane or from orbit? I mean, that is real time. That's just constantly popping up all through there, and we've seen exactly that as we've been looking at video. In fact, Mark, we've been looking at that video out of Arkansas where it's just nearly constantly illuminated by lightning. It's unbelievable.
A wild, wild night, a loud night. If you have, pets or kids that are scared of thunder, this is a tough night. Across Arkansas, across northeast Texas. And I think those conditions are going to be moving downstream. First, we can take a live look around Little Rock. Little Rock is seeing some of that lightning activity. There's more of it off to your south and west, so we're not seeing the constant flashes there in the Little Rock image. But Little Rock, plenty of lightning, but just boatloads of lightning in southwest portions of Arkansas into northeast Texas. I know that the Storm Prediction Center is coordinating with some of the local National Weather Service offices to talk about the need of a tornado watch downstream from the ones that are already in place. So remember, we have this tornado watch that's near Little Rock down to Texarkana to Shreveport, goes until 2 a.m. But the Memphis area, west of there, down through the eastern side of Little Rock, maybe portions of northern Mississippi into Louisiana, there's no watch there yet. They're in process. They're waiting to get all the local offices on the same page. They're going through that coordination as we speak. So be ready to get those alerts that a new tornado watch has been issued. Then that's because the conditions are still ripe for tornadoes this overnight. We're seeing the winds coming off the Gulf of Mexico like this, kind of reloading the deck, rejuicing the atmosphere with all that moisture coming up from the south. And yet aloft, just a little bit, we've got winds that are coming out of more of the south, and aloft a considerable bit, we've got winds coming out of the southwest. So all of that turning will continue to support the potential for tornadoes as we go through the overnight. I mean, just look at this radar and the lightning. You can really feel that the atmosphere is not slowing down just because it's dark out. For goodness sakes, it's been dark for 5 hours now across much of this area, and it is still constant thunderstorm action. I think we have a new tornado warning underneath some of that. Let's get a little bit closer in. And Carl, you might be looking at this as well. Just outside of Nacogdoches and Rusk and Shelby, new tornado warning until 12:30. Another one of these kind of kinks on the line that is going to, they're fleeting, but the atmosphere has so much rotation in it. There's so much low-level wind shear that it's hard not to get a tornado spin up out of these storms.
Yeah, and we're still watching this storm in the Houston metro, still looking at tornado warning here. I don't think a huge tornado threat at this time. It looks like it had a moment, and as Mark mentioned, they kind of come up and down very quickly. So Fort Bend and Harris counties under tornado warning right now till 12:15. And, what we're seeing here is basically a damaging wind threat, a straight line wind threat. That whole area right along there, that leading edge where it is green in this area, that's the leading edge of the very strong wind, and that is now coming up and towards the Houston area. So that's going to be getting into Missouri City, very short order, Bel Air just after the top of the hour, and Houston by about 12:07. What we are not seeing right now is much evidence of a strong circulation. We'll go back just a few frames. We saw a little circulation just west of Sugar Land, but it did not last. So less of a tornado threat now, but a damaging wind threat, and we'll have more on this in just a couple of minutes.
Liberty, liberty, liberty.
Want to let you know about some active weather that is still ongoing. Line of storms trekking through the center of the country. New tornado watches have just come out. One for the Memphis area goes until 7 a.m. local time, and that goes down the river as well. Back towards Little Rock and eastern portions of Arkansas, we've got a tornado watch until 6 a.m. local time. And then those watches continue all the way down towards the Texas coast, where there is some active weather right now. Here's the wide view of the radar along with all the lightning. Lightning has been a huge part of the story tonight. Let's zoom in within this area where we do have a kind of a small-scale tornado warning. Nacogdoches here in Texas. Here's Shreveport, Louisiana, and that's the radar site that we're using to look at this storm that's near Rusk and Shelby counties as well. There's some rotation here, but we're looking at about as high up as the radars allow us to at this point, so you expect some rotation there, but that is an area of concern, bending its way kind of right along 59. Now, there was a tornado warning that had been issued just outside of Houston. That has been allowed to expire or canceled, if you will. A severe thunderstorm warning, however, continues for the entire line, including through Houston, through Fort Bend, through Harris County, through Brazoria. This entire line has very strong straight line winds with it, and it's moving through Houston. And so that potential is still high, and of course, all of the lightning strikes are still high as well, with just constant lightning flashes throughout the St. Louis area all the way down to Houston. Widespread flooding will be a risk throughout the night, and the storm system goes even farther towards the east as we work our way overnight and through the day on Saturday.
And now it's time for the latest winter storm update. Here's how the storm is progressing and what to expect in your area. Stay tuned to the Weather Channel for the most up-to-date information.